Hey, all you cool cats and gamers! Welcome to episode 2 of Ocarina Improv, the GDQ Hotfix show special that dives in depth into Zelda Ocarina of Time Randomizer, or ZOOTR for short. I'm your host, Nuclear Reaction, and tonight myself and 9 whole grains will be breaking down an Ocarina of Time Randomizer seed as Tudos plays through. But first, I do have a few announcements. If you're watching on YouTube, go to twitch.tv/GamesDoneQuick if you're interested in looking at our live content, starting most nights at 7 p.m. Eastern and weekends at 1 p.m. Eastern. Your subs and bits help support weekly Hotfix content. If you're enjoying Hotfix, feel free to support the channel by subscribing or cheering. Also, if you have any ideas for your own show or one-off events, feel free to go to gamesdonequick.com/hotfix to submit your ideas. Well, before we start the seed, everyone, we are going to show y'all a short video that if you were here last time, you may have seen, but we're going to re-show that. This video is going to just break down the basics of what Ocarina of Time Randomizer is. Did you ever want to know what exactly Ocarina of Time Randomizer is? In this video, we will discuss what ZOOTR is and what the differences are between it and the base game. The information we'll be giving pertains to the Season 5 standard rules and settings. However, there are many ways to customize your ZOOTR experience. The basis of Randomizer is to take all the unique items in chests, mini-games, and freestanding item locations and shuffle them amongst each other. This means that the Kokiri sword chest may end up having your bow instead, or perhaps the heart piece in the spinning Goron pot may end up having the Megaton hammer. Songs are also shuffled amongst themselves, so you could get Saria's song from Sheik in the Desert Colossus. Additionally, the dungeon rewards, your 3 spiritual stones and the 6 medallions, are randomized between the dungeon bosses. So your fire medallion might be guarded by King Dodongo, rather than its normal location in the fire temple with Volvagia. ZOOTR allows players to start with the Door of Time open. That means you can freely shift between child and adult Link at any point. Expect to change ages multiple times throughout your journey. Aside from a few other small changes, this is the same Hyrule you've experienced in the classic Ocarina of Time. Randomizer takes all the best aspects of the original version and strengthens them to their fullest potential. In a way, you could look at every randomizer as its own complete puzzle. This puzzle will always be completable. Every playthrough, you'll be challenged to complete the game in a different way, with different logic dictating how you'll move through the game's iconic locales. You'll be amazed at just how many different uses there are for Link's equipment. And more than anything, you'll gain a deeper appreciation for this classic masterpiece. So that's the basics of what Ocarina of Time Randomizer is, but we're going to go really in depth here and really break down how to do some of the tricks that you'll see in Ocarina of Time Randomizers, how to read into the logic, and a lot more details. I also do have a longer YouTube video that goes more in depth for anyone interested. I will go ahead and link that in the chat for you to check out if you are interested in the longer version. But let's introduce my fellow commentator here and our runner. We've got 9 whole grains co-commentating tonight, as well as Tudos, who will be doing the run for y'all.
Yeah, morning everybody. Thank you for joining us for a humble journey through Hyrule. And want to thank everybody if you were here for episode 1. Of course, thank you for supporting that. And if this is your first time, I know the concept of shuffling everything around in Ocarina of Time may seem imposing, but we'll do our best to take you through. We've got a great runner here to do just that. And, well, Tudos, I think that's your cue.
Hey, I'm Tudos. I haven't done a run on the Games on Quick channel since 2016. It's been almost 6 years. I've last been on here at GDQ 2016, so excited to be contributing again.
Yeah, I'm excited to have both of you here tonight to help showcase how to even do this great game, at least in my consideration. So we want to go ahead and move to the start here, and we can kind of explain what we've got going on here. You'll notice every time someone has a Ocarina of Time Randomizer seed, there is these like little icons on the top. Those are seed hash, and that's just those are helpful just so you know if you're playing the same seed as someone else, primarily in a race situation. We'll kind of check that to make sure everyone's got the right one loaded up. What are some other important things that we've got going on here, Nine?
Well, immediately my head is filled with this horrifying cacophony that is minigame music. The music this time is going to be randomized all throughout. Tudos is a huge proponent of randomizing pretty much everything he can. You'll also notice that we have a nice, I'm gonna go ahead and call that fuchsia tunic here. That is representing the regular Kokiri tunic. And we also have a random song at the start. We don't bother with the early Zelda's Lullaby song check, which would involve us going behind lots of guards and sneaking through shrubbery, so we do start with that song. And we also start with a free dungeon reward that represents the light medallion that you would normally get for free in the base game.
And another interesting thing too, we do often randomize if you start as an adult or a child, and you actually can tell that right here on this screen. The fact that the Master Sword is not highlighted means that we are starting as a child this seed. If that icon was highlighted, that would mean that we already have the Master Sword in our possession and we're starting as adult. So Tudos, whenever you're ready to count us down, we'll get into the meat of it.
All right, I'll go ahead and count down then. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
And a nice cozy start here in Kokiri Forest. The first thing that you'll notice here as we head in here is that we'll see some differently sized chests. I hope that I'm not, putting my foot in my mouth here as we take a look inside of Mido's house. And we do have a large chest. There is a helpful setting in the current Season 5 settings, the competitive settings. And, well, I may have stuck an ice trap in my mouth. I was going to say that the progression items that we need, such as your hook shot, your hammer, something along those lines, will only be found in the large chests. However, ice traps are also there too, so poor Link has to take a freeze this early.
Yeah, so in the beginning here, you'll see Tudos opening. Even though we're saying that the big chests have our progression items, we're still gonna be checking the smaller chests because those can contain other helpful things like heart containers, heart pieces, maybe some bomb chews. So at the beginning of the seed, you're gonna see Tudos opening a lot more of those, and later on, not as many.
We are validated, so that's a great check to find early on. There is one green rupee check in the entire game, so to find it is just as rare as finding anything else, I suppose, and we celebrate that around these parts. But early on, oftentimes what you'll see runners do is when they find one of these progression items that we kind of talked about, that sort of determines what they're going to do next. And as Nuke so brilliantly laid out in that starting video, we do need to get 6 medallions in order to get into Ganon's Tower. That's going to trigger the Rainbow Bridge cutscene. So we got to beat some dungeons if we're going to get through this. So oftentimes you'll see somebody find an item, use that to kind of determine their path from there, and we'll kind of check in with Tudos from time to time at the start of this seed to try to figure out what he's thinking. And I guess there's no better time than now, Tudos. Talk a little bit about the Lost Woods that you're going through.
Lost Woods is nice early game checks here. There's a couple hint stones on our way to Sacred Forest Meadow. We're going to be going to the Saria's Song check. Getting songs are very powerful. It'll either get you a song that'll basically allow you to warp to that specific location, or we'll get like maybe Zelda's Lullaby, which unlocks a lot of stuff. Oh, and I've randomized the Ocarina of Sound if it wasn't obvious.
And Tudos touched on a really important point there. Nuke's talking a little bit about song checks as a whole and how powerful they are, but that's something else that's kind of, that players you'll see will kind of work towards as they're trying to route in early game.
Yeah, those warp songs really help us get around, and definitely you have songs such as Zelda's Lullaby that block off even being able to beat certain dungeons, so we definitely want to be checking those when they're available.
And I'm sure many of you in the crowd have watched enough Ocarina of Time speedrunning to know why we're walking backwards, but just in case you haven't, get very used to seeing a lot of backwards. Link does move ever so slightly faster when back walking. Side hopping is another way to get a little speed depending on where you are, but...
I believe the general rule of thumb there is you roll if it's not a direct path within, like, I think it's like back walking's faster if it's 5 or more rolls in one direction. So that's kind of the general rule of thumb there.
Oh, nice. Zelda's Lullaby.
As mentioned just a little bit ago, yeah, that song blocks us from beating a couple dungeons like the Shadow Temple, can block progress, and the Water Temple and Spirit Temple as well, so it's definitely good to see that. Also got an interesting hint stone there. Nye, do you want to kind of explain what these hint stones are and what that meant?
So the Gossip Stones, and wow, we got it a second time. How about that? The Gossip Stones in Ocarina of Time Randomizer do give us hints that are important towards beating the seed. You saw one earlier that said bottom of the well is foolish, and anytime that we see a location is foolish, in very simple terms, that means that none of the checks that we do there are necessary for progression towards beating the seed. So we might still do checks there. Tudos, you never know when you might need an extra heart refill or something along those lines, but we don't need to go there. So it's always nice to find that out early. And bottom of the well is a location that's locked behind a song as well. So a very, very nice location to get. And then you also saw another hint that just noted a single check. The ferry outside of Ganon's castle had something as well. Not anything that we needed, so we won't worry about it. And you see here as well the flare dancer atop the fire temple, which is a very out of the way check to do in fire temple, guards a small key. So we may need to go up there. We have our first, well, not the ideal first progression item, but hey, we got something there, the iron boots.
I do think it is also good to note that although an area might be considered foolish or barren, that doesn't mean that you don't have to do that area. For instance, you might have a medallion dungeon be hinted as foolish, but you still are going to need to beat that dungeon so that you can get that medallion. It just means that any of the checks inside of that dungeon are nothing that's going to help you progress.
So Tudos, what are we thinking here early? You've got ZL, you've got Prelude, you've got Iron Boots. Where are we headed?
Well, I'm going to be heading to Lon Lon next. Songs are very powerful, especially if you can get them as soon as possible, because it'll either unlock checks or make it easier for you to get another location, as I stated earlier. So Lon Lon Ranch, very easy to go to. There are 2 checks that you don't need any items to get there as well. You have the check that you get from the chickens game, and you also have the check in the back windmill. So not only will I get a song, but I will get those 2 checks as well.
And Tudos brings up a great point talking about checks that don't require anything to get. You all may have noticed we do not even have a Kokiri sword here to start. Our equipment very, very sparse, and that's by design. So it means that something that we need is going to be found in one of these early checks that Tudos is kind of going after now. And I think that's one of the really intriguing parts of Ocarina of Time Randomizer as a whole is the game just so nicely sort of directs itself. You find some bombs, you very naturally go towards things that are bomb locked. You find your hook shot, maybe you go into a dungeon, but you're always adapting and changing the flow of how you're moving through the seed based on what you find in these early checks.
You know, Nine, ZOOTRs are kind of like onions if you think about it.
Oh?
They've got a lot of layers, you know? You got your first layer right here where we don't have any items quite yet, but second layer, maybe we'll find a a bomb bag, and so on and so forth.
I propose that is the new unit of measurement for progression inside of ZOOTR seeds. The onion scale.
So where's this Rudo's letter I got just now in this onion?
Early.
It's kind of towards the outside of the onion, you know? Like you kind of took off that like skin.
Ah, okay, yeah. So Rudo's letter here, we should mention maybe for anyone not familiar with what that item is. The iron boots are somewhat self-explanatory. You put them on, you go, you sync, you can walk around. They've been in a number of Legend of Zelda games and are a mainstay, but Rudo's letter is a very interesting item. You do need it in order to access Jabu's belly. And I'll make the description quick here because we've got a much more important item up here that we can use, but moving the king does also allow us to access Ice Cavern. When you give the king Rudo's letter, it does logically give you access to that. And it does give us access to a bottle afterwards, which could be quite useful, but not as useful as this, Nukes.
The bomb bag, and I often regard this as her most important progressive item, especially in the beginning. Bombs unlock a ton of checks. There's so many checks that are explosive locked. In addition, there's whole dungeons like Dodongo's Cavern that now we can access. So very important early on.
I'm not surprised that Lon Lon Ranch is the path of beating a boss here.
Zora's Fountain.
Yeah, so this
Path
is
to Phantom Ganon.
This is a new brand of hints that we're seeing here. The path to hints. How these kind of work is we see the hinted area there, and it leads to a certain boss that we'll have to beat. So Tudos knows that he's gonna have to go to those locations to find an item that will lead to him eventually beating that boss.
And there are certain runners who could tell you, could decipher like lines and lines of lore and code just based on those small hints. But for the life of me, I can't figure it out. So I will say that Lon Lon Ranch having Rudo's letter is a pretty likely idea that leads to Baronade. Baronade is the name of the boss that is in Jabu's belly. So that connection, a little bit easier to make, but we got some very good hints there. And we also found out that Frozen Cavern, which Ice Cavern, has the Nocturne of Shadow in the back of it. And Nocturne of Shadow, a very useful song for getting access to Kakariko Village with no fuss, but also it is the only way that we will be able to access the Shadow Temple. And Nukes, this might be a good time to talk a little bit about what glitches are and are not allowed in this format.
Yeah, so we definitely allow a lot of tricks within Ocarina of Time Randomizer, but for the most part, all the quote-unquote tricks that we allow are all glitchless. There's a few exceptions to that, and that's only if the glitchless, or the glitchless way is a lot more difficult than the glitched way, to put it simply. But there's just a laundry list of things that aren't allowed, kind of just because it breaks the game too much, and it kind of I would say defeats the point of doing these.
Yeah, I agree entirely, and we'll have Tudos kind of slow down and do some of those tricks as time comes along. And if something's here in Bombshoe Bowling, might get to show you some cool setups here, but there's never anything in Bombshoe Bowling when you want there to be. This is a notable check, partially because Tudos needed to get the bomb bag in order to do this. Fun fact, you cannot actually play Bombshoe Bowling. There we go. You can actually not play Bombshoe Bowling if all you have is bomb shoes. You actually do have to have the bomb bag in order to make this playable. So, Tudos, talk just very briefly about these setups that you're going to use here.
We got the center one for the second part here, but the third part, there's actually a very easy setup to get to the last one here. If you tail your bomb shoe, wait for it to explode, it will actually put you in a very nice angle where you can just kind of walk close to the side here and drop a bounce right away, and you'll just get it every time. So it's actually a lot easier than it looks to do this game once you learn the setup.
And that's pretty important to note because for those of you counting at home, each pop of Bombchu Bowling costs 30.
Well, you got to showcase the setup there, so that was good. Not all was lost.
We couldn't have planned it any better. Oh man. I was just gonna say each pop of Bombchu Bowling does cost 30 rupees to play, so that's why you saw Tudos gathering some rupees at the castle gate, but I was about to make a joke about how 60 rupees for a Zora scale being pretty expensive, but 60 rupees for an ice trap, that seems a fair price.
There's nothing fair about that. I don't know what you're talking about.
I think I've recovered now.
Yeah, for those of you who are wondering what that was, that's an ice trap, which you have the option to turn off or on, or to different degrees while you're doing these seeds. And if you have it set on major items, there is no way to really distinguish it between it being an ice trap or not. It looks exactly the same. It turns the same way. I know there's people who think that one turns in the opposite direction, but they appear exactly the same, and you only find out once you grab the item.
So Tudos, you're headed to Kakariko Village here at nighttime. What specifically are you looking for here as Childling?
Oh, well, I'm gonna visit everyone's best friend, Dampe. Everyone knows Dampe for his, well, especially in speedruns, 100% speedruns of this game, where everyone has a great time wondering if you'll ever get the heart piece in a reasonable manner. But in Ocarina of Time Randomizer, we did kind of take that aspect out, and we made it so you'll get the check first try every time. So no frustrating, or I guess for the chat, no waiting around to see if you'll actually get the item in a reasonable time here. We'll just get it right away.
Also, Tudos just said something very interesting there and broke his stick. As we mentioned earlier, you do not start with the Kokiri sword. So this is just a method to help preserve that stick count, because once you have a broken stick, you can use it over and over again within the area you're in and not deplenish your stick count. And that's just achieved by jump slashing a wall at a certain angle.
Yeah, basically there's a very easy setup for it, and I'll actually do this again here. So if you Z-target a wall, just backflip, shield flick twice, and then roll forward while holding Z. Take your stick out and then jump slash. You'll keep your stick.
Now, quickly do that 6 more times for us, Tudos, just so, we run out of sticks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if I run out of sticks, I won't be able to do this next trick I'm going to show off after Dampe.
Aha! See what he's got for us. How about that?
Vanilla.
I thought that'd be a nice trap. I was waiting for it.
So Dampe, for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with just like Ocarina of Time as a whole, Dampe is actually one of the few features in this game that really takes advantage of the in-game clock. It's not just a day and night cycle. There are actually certain events that are triggered in different hours. And that is one of the few things that are. Dampe only comes out at the early parts of the night here, so that's one of the reasons why you saw Tudos pop in right after it became nighttime. Makes it that much easier to find him, and yeah, just a cool little thing. There's only a handful of features that actually utilize that clock. But we're gonna go into Composer's Grave now for another song, and Tudos will hopefully get to show us a cool trick called Flame Storage. Some of you who watched last episode might know Engel had quite a fight to get flame storage to work on demand, but kudos. We'll hope you've got better luck this time.
Just want to emphasize as well, something I never really, when I played this game first as a kid, I did not understand the power of the Deku Nut. And when you try to play Randomizer or like play through this game again, even the vanilla game, you'll realize that nuts do so much for you with the way they react with all the enemies in this game.
They outright destroy some enemies, they stun lots of enemies, they can even damage the final boss. What a useful tool. All right, so talk us through this trick, Tudos.
All right, so basically we're gonna stand a little bit close to this torch here. We're gonna take a stick on that lights my torch, but I'm gonna put it away again. And during the animation putting it away, it kind of stores the fact that you have this flame. So what we're gonna do is we are going to get as far away from this flame as we can without losing it, because otherwise it'll get deloaded. So 4 hops, we'll take it out and you'll see I have the flame again. And we are going to hopefully light the torch here. And we got it. We want to make sure we lit the torch before the stick burns out. Oh, we got a big chest out of it. Ooh, that was really good.
That was very worth it.
So to kind of pull back the curtain on some of this here, that trick that Tudos just did is called flame storage, and it's a way for you as Child Link to get that particular check, which normally requires a magic meter and either Din's Fire or Fire Arrows. So it's a trick that typically you would need 2 other items in order to do. It's a trick that very often is left behind by runners as they're going about doing their checks, because it does take a little time to get, and it is ultimately only 1 check. But if you can route it in early on when you're grabbing that check as Child, it really, really can pay out, and that's what we've had happen here. So great work, Tudos.
And just a reminder, if you're starting off doing these, you're not expected to know how to do that. You don't have to ever do that to complete the game. So it's definitely something that you can learn to do. It's not, flame storage is honestly a really nice trick to learn, but not necessary ever to complete this.
All right, so my kind of my plan here is I'm going to wrap up collecting things as a child for now, and I can obviously come back again later. I start with the Prelude of Light, so it's pretty easy to go back and forth between adult and child in this seed. Sometimes you don't start with the Prelude of Light, so like it's really hard to, you have to walk all the way to the market and go into the Temple of Time to change between child and adult.
Got our Nocturne hint once again. And Tudos mentioned something right there. Again, if you're just joining us, maybe this is your first time seeing ZOOTR, one of the real hallmarks of this format is the ability to switch between child and adult and child on a whim, simply by going to the Temple of Time and going up to the sword pedestal and either pulling or putting the sword back in the pedestal. And you will see players change multiple times throughout the seed. And it's, I think, a great way to kind of take advantage of a feature that may have not been fully utilized in the original version of the game. Of course, we only swap between the two a couple times in a vanilla playthrough of Ocarina of Time, but here you can expect to do it multiple times. And as you see Tudos do the side hop and the back walk, we're gonna see our first change. And unfortunately for Child Link, Adult Link does get to have quite a bit more fun in the randomizer format. Most of the game is locked behind the adult form, but we'll be back here eventually, I'm sure of it.
Come on. There we go.
So this is a very important screen here. As we mentioned earlier, Tudos is gonna have to get all 6 of these medallions to enter Ganon's castle. So that gives us the knowledge of all the dungeons that we're gonna have to complete in order to get those 6 medallions.
Ooh, that looks important.
I only have 24 seconds, but you can see a strength up there. That's going to be very useful. Alright, so there's a certain spot you can stand and peek that, and it's a heart piece.
The freestanding heart pieces are also randomized here, so thankfully Tudos can take a peek up and know exactly what those items are. It's a pretty useful little tip here that we'll kind of see as the seed goes on. There are a number of different tricks you can use. In Graveyard earlier, Tudos actually used a nice little trick where if you roll up against a wall while Z targeting and release Z targeting while pushing C up at the right time, you can actually just peek right through. Link's field of vision is actually beyond the wall, so you can kind of take a look and see what is inside of a box or what size a chest is. And we won't be going into bottom of the well this seed probably, so we might not get to see it there, but there are plenty of other instances, and we'll certainly have Tudos call them out as we see them. But Tudos, you got Sun Song, which is a very useful song for pretty much exactly what you're doing right now. Tell the people about adult Kakariko Village and why we always find ourselves here early on in seeds.
Well, I'm actually not quite going to be doing adult Kakariko Village yet. I'm going to do something a little bit, what I guess most runners would consider a little bit more bold. I'm going to be clearing Dodongo's Cavern. You only need the bombs to clear it. So it does do two things for me. One, I started with a stone. You get one free medallion or stone to start with, so I start with a stone. So if I beat Dodongo's Cavern this early, in case this is an all dungeon seed, which means all dungeon stands for you need to get a required song on the Song of Time check, in which case you'd be collecting the 3 stones and the 6 medallions, opposed to just the 6 medallions for randomizer. So if there does just happen to be a song I need to beat the game, I only need to beat one more dungeon to do it.
It is a bold play, but as Tudos mentioned, all we need are bombs to get through this dungeon. And Dodongo's Cavern, another portion. We find ourselves in Adult Cac very early on, oftentimes. But we also find ourselves in Dodongo's Cavern early on, and you all may have noticed we're here as Adult Link. As it turns out, they didn't really seal the place off. It's still here, it's still a cavern, and you'll be amazed at how quickly Adult Link can blast through this dungeon. The first thing you'll notice here, we're just gonna use our nice lanky arms, hop up here and skip that entire half of the dungeon. We don't need to bother with that. We're all the way, basically halfway through it already, and the rest of it's gonna fly by just as quick.
Nice DK64 reference, by the way.
You...
You also see a nice little trick that Tudos is using here. Just maybe a method. I don't know if you want to call it a trick, but shooting the bombs with the arrows here is just going to make them explode a little bit faster. And obviously we want to go as fast as possible, so every frame counts.
Every frame does count. Although we should note here, Engel would be mad at me if I did not mention the fact that you all are more than welcome to take ZOOTR in any way that you'd like it. A lot of us here on commentary and the racers that you'll see are more accustomed to maybe trying for different times, competing in some of the weekly races that are always put on by a number of different wonderful groups. But I mean, boot it up and just try to get through it. Relive what this game is like when everything is randomized. You can turn any setting on, any setting off. It's so customizable, and that really is kind of the joy of this. I will freely state that my first time through an Ocarina of Time randomizer was just over 13 hours. And, you know, I felt pretty good about that, I'll be honest.
It adds a new breath of life into a beloved game for many of us. It also adds a lot of quality of life changes too. If you just kind of want to go through the game a little bit faster, You can notice under the C buttons there, we've got the D-pad. We have a D-pad ocarina. Our boots are set to a D-pad as well, so we don't have to menu every time we want to take the boots on and off. We don't have to set the ocarina to a C button in order to use it. So there's just a lot of great features such as that makes this just a little bit more enjoyable as well.
Oh man, if you hated Water Temple as a child, well, I mean, the D-pad iron boots make it a little bit more bearable.
Yeah, makes it a lot more bearable. I mean, even hover boots makes it a lot more bearable, and we'll kind of call out some of those moments as they come across in temples, but it's amazing even now that we've played so many seeds, just how different some temples play when you have items that you weren't supposed to have in the vanilla version of the game. So Dodongo's Cavern, I suppose the item that we weren't supposed to have is, I mean, what is Link, like 6 foot here? Like our height is the item that we were not supposed to have. And you'll see right here as well, we're gonna just go ahead and make this little jump, little hop up, get going around that back side. But there's plenty of dungeons where having a key item will make it a little bit easier, allow us to go out of order, and kind of learning the different ways that you can attack these dungeons with different items, I think is really a big proponent of the replayability.
Yeah, you'd be surprised going through. I've been playing this game for a few years now, and I still learn new methods to use items in different dungeons that you just wouldn't think of because it wasn't available in the vanilla version.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
So this is actually a nice transition, and this is probably serious time for Tudos anyways. He heads into the hardest boss fight in the game. But you'll notice that earlier on, Tudos saw a Goron bracelet out in Death Mountain Crater. And you may say, well, wait a minute, he just got a Goron bracelet here too, and I'm pretty sure there's only one of those. And you are correct. So there are a number of items in this game where you can find more than one of them. They're called the progressive variants. So you have a hook shot and a long shot, but you won't just go out and immediately find a long shot. You would have to find both hook shots in order to get the long shot. The same thing works with the strength upgrades. That Goron bracelet, when Tudos goes back to grab it now, will be silver gauntlets and likewise gold gauntlets if we happen to find them. So it's kind of a nice way to make sure that you can't just up and find the exact item that you need. You have to find a couple variants of it, and that can add a lot of strategy into when you grab certain items.
One thing I want to mention, one of the reasons why I did Dodongo's Cavern, I know I have Sunsong, but beating this dungeon specifically actually changes the time of day to noon. When I first entered CAC as a adult, it was nighttime, and you have different checks available to you during nighttime and daytime for this village here. So by beating Dodongo's Cavern, that set the day to daytime, and that will allow me to clear all the day checks when I couldn't do it beforehand.
That right there is another one of those glitchless jumps that we can use in Ocarina of Time Randomizer that Tudos used to get on the rooftop there.
Lining up a nice jump, and now we can talk a little bit here about CAC. The sheer volume of available checks that Tudos is going to be able to do here as adults is one of the main reasons why this is an area people come to very quickly. So you notice he was able to get those 2 checks really without any items, without any problems. He's going to be able to pick that check, and it's a bottle. We know it's not Ruto's letter because we have that, and also we can't see the letter inside of it, but he's going to do another little jump here. Link can pop up onto this, I guess, almost pedestal. Simply jump to the top, grab it there, wait for it to come around, and is it actually a bottle? It is. Okay, for half a moment I thought we were going to get another ice trap, but this is also another song check, which is another really important reason to come here early. And This is actually a seed where we were able to get a lot of songs early, which is quite nice. As we get to the back half of the seed, we'll have most of the songs. There won't be a lot left for us to grab, but that's Song of Time, so we have that additionally. Doesn't perform a lot of functions for us in this format. It does allow us to access a couple checks in a couple of different temples, but for the most part, a song that you really hope you don't ever need to have if you get it late.
We mentioned earlier how there's some quality of life to the games where we went to Dompe digging and it was always a check. You don't have to actually really find the correct spot there. We have another quality of life with the Dompe race here, where as long as Tudos comes in under a minute, he will be able to get both of the checks. If he comes in over a minute, then he'll only be able to get one of the checks, but it just cuts down having to do this race twice if you're able to consistently get it under a minute. Another instance of that is found in the horseback archery game out in the desert, where if you score over 1,500 points, you'll get the check for both 1,000 and 1,500.
Kudos. I'm actually really impressed you were able to salvage this.
Me too.
I just want to make this close, you know. Viewers need to get on the edge of their seats. See? It was close.
Quite nice. And so that is actually another cumulative progressive item here. So we found our bow earlier inside of Composer's Grave that we talked about. But had we not found that one, that right there would have been a bow that Tudos could have grabbed. As it stands now, it's just a quiver upgrade, which, say jest, it's always nice to have more, but Tudos will be keeping that in the back of his mind, knowing that that was there.
And logically, I'm definitely going to consider that that was probably the first bow we were going to get, because that is a bow that you don't need any other items to get, while the bow I got in the Composer's Grave needed Dins and Magic to get.
Yeah. You could say that's like the skin of the onion, you know? That outer layer.
We are rolling with this all the way through.
So 9 did remind me that this is a check that I've forgotten sometimes, and I'm not going to forget it today, not on GDQ.
Woohoo! So, as Bombchu Bowling needs bombs in your inventory to access, it's similar here. This bow game requires that you have a bow, interestingly enough. On that note, though, the child shooting gallery actually doesn't require that you have a slingshot, so it's kind of funny that you can do that one and not this one, but, you know, what will be will be. Cleared that. And one other thing that I don't believe we've discussed too much, Skulltulas are still alive and well in this version of Ocarina of Time. I believe tonight we have 10, 20, and 30 skull checks on, meaning that if you go and talk to the good folks inside the Spider House, you will be able to get some items if you come to them with that number. Typically 40 and 50 skulls are also on, so there are some seeds where an item that you absolutely need to have does require 50 skulls, and you know, you'll be amazed at the way that these runners are able to grab those skulls early on as they're going about being productive in other ways. So another thing that we very much recommend that you turn off as you go about playing the game for the first time, because boy, oh boy, it can be very demoralizing to have a hook shot on 50 skulls, have to go to a guide, have to find out where all the skulls are. I personally recommend just don't worry about it. You'll learn as time goes on.
And that's another thing about how it's so customizable, and it's really, really great when you're starting off, because there are definitely checks I know when I started off that I would never play with. I'd never turn on 1,500 horseback archery, 40 and 50 skulls I'd turn off, which are pretty common for beginners. And it's totally valid until you get more comfortable with those checks.
Will the generous seed continue? Actually, that's oddly convenient.
I was trying to plan out my rupee count so I could buy it in here the first time, but now I don't need to worry anymore.
We go from fuchsia to salmon? I don't even know what color this is. Burgundy?
Like an orchid color? Orchid?
Ooh, that's a good one. No, I like that. I like that.
And again, the colors were a completely random selection by the program, so I didn't end up picking these colors here.
That's a nifty way to grab that skull there that you might not think of otherwise. Tudos did damage through that little stone tablet and then just kind of back hopped on top and back walked.
Oh, there's 3!
We don't even get to see the freeze. Ah, there it is. Okay, it did hold off. I was just gonna say, is it gonna pan away so that Link's suffering is off screen? You know, you saved that Goron. Like, what a way to reward.
All right, so I have bombs, but I'm gonna do a trick here anyway. If you charge your sword up in this particular room, the camera will pan up and you can actually see if there's big chests over there. I actually don't see any big chests because they'd be very obviously sticking out above the other ones. But there's a hint zone back there, so I'm gonna check it anyway.
So an interesting thing about this room in particular is Tudos goes back here is this is an example of a room that you can play very differently based on the items you have. So of course you saw Tudos kind of bomb his way to get this far, but you can actually utilize the silver gauntlets as well to pick up all of these silver boulders. So you can kind of just toss your way through the room, if you will. If you have that, you can also get through with the Megaton hammer. You can also get through with bomb shoes, though you'll never be required to get back there with bomb shoes. So just another example of different items you have, changing up the game plan as you go along. Improvising, if you will.
And again, although Tudos didn't need to open those small chests, since we know that only big chests have progressive items, still useful to check those at this point with only 4 hearts, and could just help survivability a little bit here.
Remember when this was a bracelet earlier? Because we got the bracelet in Dodongo's Cavern, this becomes the silver gauntlets.
Very nice item to get. The silver gauntlets most notably lock Spirit Temple. You cannot get into the adult side of Spirit Temple without the silver gauntlets, but they also lock some checks inside of Gerudo Training Grounds, which is a very important area in Randomizer. And of course, we already talked about some of their other functionality, but more often than not, an item that we need, so it's always nice to have it early.
All right. So
Tudos, with the hints that we have at this point, you may have been about to go this way too. Where are we going to head next now that we've kind of cleared what I'm going to guess was your plan for this immediate area?
So right now I have a bow that didn't require any items to get. I have a strength that only required bombs to get. We got a hint saying that we can beat Phantom Ganon if we just go to Zora's Fountain. So we only need one more item to go beat Forest Tunnel, and that's the hook shot. So I think it makes perfect sense that we head on over to our good pal, the Ice Cavern, so we can go ahead and get what may or may not be a hook shot.
So are you saying that we're going to head there at a high rate of speed, perhaps rushing to ice?
Yeah, I think we're going to be doing something like that.
Music to my ears. So something else to kind of note here to kind of break down pieces of Tudos's decision making here. So you'll recall that we found Rudo's letter earlier on, very, very early when we were a child, and we also have Zelda's Lullaby. So even though we have not yet moved King Zora, we know that we have the ability to move King Zora, and we also can get into Zora's domain because we have Zelda's Lullaby. So Tudos's decision here makes perfect sense. He knows what he can and cannot logically access, what the game has given him the ability to do. So certainly part of it as well, and I'd wager that we're finally going to get to show a nice trick that we were not able to show when Engel ran in episode 1, and that is the King Zora skip, the Mweep skip. Tons of fun names for it, but certainly one of my favorite tricks. Before that, though, we've got to skip somebody else. Oh, never mind. He'll come back for him.
Going straight to the Mweep.
So the play here is that I'm betting that the hint is telling me that the hook shot is there, so I don't have to go back to that direction a second time.
Gonna show off this jump.
Oh no!
So this is another nice jump. Normally you need either the hover boots or to come up here as a child in order to make this jump. So in this case, it's not an item that we have to have, but Tudos is playing for the crowd here and gonna show a common jump setup here. Luckily, you can make use of Link's backwalks and rolls and side hops and things of that nature. Once you get lined up with a wall, you can pretty well always guarantee where Link is going to end up. So many of the setups you'll see for some of the more intricate jumps will involve a lot of what you're seeing here. Some side hops, some side rolls, and a well-timed jump.
Well, I don't think this one's happening today. I'll try it one more time. It's been a while since I actually had to do this jump. This is not a common one you have to do.
And it's a pretty good example of just a jump that, again, only saves time in the long run. Again, we could have come up here as a child and used the cuckoo, or there's always a chance that we have hover boots. So any item that you need to get there, you will never be required to do the jump that Tudos is trying to do. So I think now it's personal, and he's committed to the jump at this point.
There we go.
There we
go. Thank you, Unigiant, in the chat for the assist.
I was starting to get concerned that would be a nice trap.
Yeah, I forgot you're not supposed to do the roll at the end. But like I said, that one's not one I do often.
And again, you'll never be required to do a trick like that, so.
And there's some good discussion going on in the chat about hints and the role that they play in ZOOTR in general. The interpretation of the hints and when you find them actually really does contribute to a lot of very high skill, which it may sound weird to say like, oh, interpreting a hint, how can that be skill related? But there's a lot of information that you can glean from these hints, and the top runners are able to, again, just come up with paragraphs of explanation just based on those hints. But Tudos, walk us through this trick because it's one of the best.
So there's a lot of setup to this trick, as you can see here, and I actually just screwed it up. But what this is going to do, it's going to put me in a very specific spot. And the spot I'm looking for is going to allow me to get a jump off right on this corner right here. So this is about the right spot. And if I align myself about right here, I'm going to do a pause mover so I get a first frame jump. That will get me a jump off and let me grab the fence and climb over the king. Another reason why it's nice to go back here as well, I already have Ruto's Ladder. I could have turned this in as a child, but I didn't do that. So I still know that I can access this place logically, but I didn't need to run up the river and turn it in. I can just go here right now.
And again, part of the reason why I kind of elected to do this is, again, as we discussed earlier, the interpretation of the hint. You've said, we know we can beat Phantom Ganon, or that we need to come up here to get something to beat Phantom Ganon. So the rush over here is a big part of that, right? So again, interpreting hints and how you go about it, I think is, you know, kind of the next level. Once you kind of learn where all the checks are, once you get a little bit more comfortable with Ocarina of Time as a whole, and certainly the randomized format, then you start being able to interpret hints a little more, and you'll be amazed at how time just flies off on the finishing timer once you start to get a little bit more comfortable with some of these.
All right, so that bomb bag is not the first bomb bag that you get in the onion. So this is going to be either the hook shot or an item that will allow us to get the hook shot. There we go.
There we go.
And the hook shot, one of, if not the most versatile item outside of bombs. It's, of course, a ranged option that's nice, and you'll see that there's a lot of things that you might consider fighting with a bow that the hook shot will do just fine for. It, of course, gives us access to Forest Temple, which we know we need to beat, and now are able to full clear. It can help us grab some skulls, although we know now we don't need 30 skulls, which is kind of nice. Maybe Tudos will be a hero and grab the 30 skulls for the ice trap anyway, but I doubt it. And it's also needed to get through a lot of dungeons. Of course, you need the long shot in order to beat Water Temple. There's a lot of checks that you can get in Shadow Temple that require it, logically at least, and plenty to do in Spirit Temple that needs it as well. So a very useful item to get, and certainly worth going out of your way to grab if you have a pretty good idea of where it might be.
Yeah, I'd say in terms of progression items, it's very close second to bomb bag in importance here. That's if you have the bomb bag, you're probably looking for your hook shot next.
And for those of you who tuned in to episode 1 of Ocarina Improv, you may notice this was not an area that we ended up going. We did not have to make the frigid trek over here with Engel, so everything that Tudos will be doing for you all will be, at the very least, an Ocarina of Improv first. So, Ice Cavern, very notable and pretty infamous, which is why there's so many jokes about it, because it has a few item checks, but it also has a song check, and this is a pretty out-of-the-way song to grab. So we found it hinted earlier and found that it was Nocturne of Shadow. So even if we don't get any useful items here, getting Nocturne of Shadow is always worth it in the long run, especially on seeds where we need to beat Shadow Temple. So sometimes you'll have to come out here, and there's a number of different jumps and setups you can do to make this go a little bit faster. The block push room is going to look very, very different compared to what you may be used to. And Tudos is gonna go ahead and show us some of the jump setups there, and potentially maybe even what a bomb jump looks like here.
Not turning in Ruto's letter basically means that bottle is useless to me. That's one of the main reasons why I went out of my way to get that bottle that we saw in the windmill earlier. This will, of course, allow me to put blue fire into the bottle.
So another good question by Oregon Lincoln in the chat here, talking about logic itself. Does the randomizer use linear logic to ensure each step is progressible? The short answer to that is kind of yes. The best way to describe it is that the items get distributed in the seed first, and then a path, if you will, is determined through them. So in a sense, yes, you're never going to need to go out of that logical path in order to complete the seed. One of the first principles of the kind of generation of logic in Ocarina of Time Randomizer is under these settings that we're playing, every check is eventually accessible. So all of these checks that Tudos is doing does follow a sort of path further and further deeper into the onion. But there's a lot of nuance in and of that.
It's also important to note that the seeds are always completable. It will never lock you out. It will not, you could make the worst decisions with your keys inside dungeons and you'll still be able to complete the seed no matter what.
So you don't have to push the block around the room, even if you're doing like a glitchless rule set like we are here. You can do some really nice jumps here that will allow you to kind of skip all that.
There we go.
See another question in chat from Stankbug asking, does the randomizer allow you to complete the game just in a different order? And the answer is yes. So that's the order we get the items is all shuffled around. The order we get the songs is all shuffled around. But again, we'll always be able to complete the game. And that's our ultimate goal, is to defeat Ganon. So again, just to catch up for anyone who maybe is just joining us, our ultimate goal is to collect all 6 medallions, which are the dungeon rewards. Those rewards are shuffled, so every time we have to beat a different combination of dungeons. Each dungeon is going to give us either a medallion or a stone. And once we get all 6 medallions that will spawn the bridge to Ganon's castle, we'll head up and defeat Ganon.
And our reward for getting through here, the always useful Nocturne of Shadow. So, Tudos, where are we headed next? You mentioned Forest Temple earlier, but you're playing Bolero. Why is that?
We do not have Minuet of Forest. We can't just warp straight there, so we need to go to the next best place, which is the Death Mountain Crater.
Death Mountain Crater, getting us to Lost Woods. And Lost Woods, another area that got a real raw deal in the original Ocarina of Time. There's these handy warps that allow you to go to Zora's River and in here to Goron City that, weren't necessarily needed at any point in the game, and I wager a lot of people wouldn't have used a ton, but in Randomizer, it is such a handy way to get around here. Bolero and Minuet, 2 very useful songs that get you here early and can again help you navigate around the map.
We're gonna try that again. There we go.
Excellent. The Mido skip, for those of you who might have been a while since you've played Vanilla, recall that Mido does need Saria Song to be played in order to move him. He has the fastest feet in all of Hyrule and will not let you pass normally, but with a nice angled jump there that you saw Tudos do, we can skip Mido. The only 2 ways to logically get into Forest Temple are either with Saria Song or by getting Minuet of Forest. Those are the only 2 ways you're expected to do it. So important to note here for Tudos that he actually can't technically be here right now with the songs that he has, but that's not a problem at all. And the hover boot's a very nice prize for coming here a little early too.
Also, just want to note for Tudos that we are coming up on the 1 hour mark, so maybe as you're entering Forest Temple here, we can pause the timer and take a quick little wellness break.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan to me. No!
Ooh.
Haven't gotten hit by him in a while. Someone mentioned in chat that it must be a very interesting algorithm to make this kind of possible, and someone actually wrote a thesis on the way the items get generated to make this like every seed possible. Very interesting.
Right now, the jump that Tudos is trying to set up here. This maze is filled with the moblins that you just saw, get Tudos in the neck with a spear. So oftentimes we just want to not have to worry about that. We don't want to have to line up arrow shots. We don't want to have to wait. So there's two ways to typically bypass that. One of which is if you have the Scarecrow song, you can call for Pierre, and Pierre will pop up there, and you can hook shot to him. You could try the jump that Tudos was doing, or you can do a ground jump, which we just saw Tudos do instead. All totally viable options. The hover boots make it an even quicker process, but yeah, we like to go fast around here. We'll get past the big guy, and we don't even need to get rid of him.
Vanilla song location, nice.
Minuet of Forest, a lovely prize, means that we were supposed to have Saria's song before we came here, but again, that ain't no problem.
All right, I think this would be a good place to stop for now.
Hey, all you cool cats and gamers! Welcome back to episode 2 of Ocarina Improv, the GDQ Hotfix show special that dives in depth into Zelda Ocarina of Time Randomizer, or ZOOTR for short. I'm your host, Nuclear Reaction, and with me tonight is 9 Whole Grains and Tudos, and we are playing through a seed of Ocarina of Time Randomizer and breaking down exactly what everything is going on here and how to play through one of these. Maybe 9 or Tudos, if you want to give a kind of a recap of what has happened so far here and what we're going to do next.
Yeah, I'll happily break down what has happened so far, and then Tudos, I'll toss it to you, kind of talk about Forest Temple and the plains afterwards. But very early on in this seed, we received a whole host of items. We got a bow, we got a bomb bag, we got Ruto's letter, Zelda's lullaby, the song that we needed. And we were able to go around, beat Dodongo's cavern, clear a lot of Death Mountain Crater, and we were even able to go all the way out to Ice Cavern and get our hookshot from Zora's Fountain. So with all that in mind, with all of that cleared, we're now here in Forest Temple, which we have everything we needed to beat. And Tudos, tell us how we're going to go about doing that.
Okay, so now that we're in Forest Temple here, we require 3 items to beat it, and we got all of them in the first hour of the run here. We have the hook shot, which we just got from Zora's Fountain. We actually saw a hint that Zora's Fountain had an item that let us beat Phantom Ganon, which is why I went there early, and we got the hook shot. We got the bow from the Dampe race, and we got the strength from Dodongo's cavern. We actually got a second strength from Death Mountain Crater inside the wall. So that's where we're at right now, and we have enough items to beat the Forest Temple.
Yeah, so we'll get diving into that here. Real quick before we start, again, chat, I do have a couple announcements. Unapologetically, Black and Fast is coming up. In this new reoccurring Hotfix Marathon, Black runners are front and center in a celebration of Black joy. This first iteration is running February 12th and 13th for 12 hours a day. Schedule is out now, and you can find it at gamesdonequick.com/hotfix. So alongside our recurring shows, GDQ Hotfix also has multiple week-long events with Frost and Flame Fatales. These are women-led events, are twice a year supporting other great charities. Frost Fatales will be February 27th to March 5th. Use command FF in chat or go to gamesdonequick.com/framefatales for more info. All right, Tudos, whenever you're ready to count us down, we'll get started again.
Sure. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
So the Forest Temple, a pretty notable dungeon inside of Randomizer. Oftentimes you pop in a race stream and both runners are in here. You'll see people break out all of their lovely, comfy, cozy, sleepy emotes because even as wild as Randomizer can get, this is one of the dungeons that we will see basically every room of. It is a fully linear dungeon. Now, even within this dungeon, there are a couple of different ways that you can go about clearing its content, and we actually have enough items here that Tudos will be able to demonstrate a couple of those ways, but this is a dungeon we will have to go through all of. There are quite a few dungeons that you can skip a good chunk of in the Randomizer format. This, unfortunately, is not one of them, but for all of you Forest Temple fans out there, you'll love that we get to explore every inch of this gorgeous place. Actually, this is, we completely forgot to mention crouch stabbing and its role in this. So, Tudos, kind of as you're fighting here, I guess if you want to kind of narrate how your fight is going here and how you go about setting up that power stab.
So the power stab is really cool because it basically stores the last kind of sword slash that you did onto that crouch stab. And the crouch stab comes, it's a faster option than just a jump slash. So what I like to do there is just do a jump slash right away and then just finish off the stealthos with power crouch stabs. That gives the jump slash attack onto those little short stabs and you can beat them pretty quickly.
3 crouch stabs, all it takes to do that. And the rare instance here where we're actually going to get all 200 rupees of the large rupee, it's not every day you see that. But already you're going to see a little kind of different pathing that you could take. So you'll note that Tudos has the Song of Time. He ended up getting that earlier. And in vanilla Ocarina of Time, you're not expected to have the bow at this point. So the game would expect you to play Song of Time, to move the Song of Time block on the other side of that last room we are in, and use that to gain access to the courtyard. Instead, we have the bow, so we'll just go ahead and use it, head out here to the courtyard and have a slightly quicker way through. And since we have the hover boots, we actually could have gone a little bit further with the small key that we found and use hover boots to go backwards and get back out here into the courtyard as well. So a couple different ways to get to the courtyard, but we do know that we're gonna have to come out here eventually, so may as well take the way that you're most comfortable with, and that is what Tudos has done here.
Yeah, there's a lot of neat ways you can do Forest Temple. You can sometimes even dip into Forest Temple even if you just have a hook shot. Like you don't need to have bow or strength to do some of these checks in here. It's kind of nice to dip in there here early when you know it's a medallion you have to get, just in case one of those times that you need to beat the dungeon is actually in here. Oh no, how have we found all of them? I'm pretty sure
that was the goal, right?
I'm pretty sure we found all 5 ice traps in the game.
Tudos, this is not what the ice percent category is supposed to be. But if it was, you would have to get 30 skulls, so I suppose that's that.
I mean, I'm halfway there. I still could, for the fans.
Keep that in the back pocket. The courtyard area cleared. Now we get to move up a little bit further. Keep an eye on Tudos's small key count. Again, because this is a dungeon where we have to go through the entirety of it, the key count is very important. In some of the other dungeons, you can actually do what we affectionately refer to as save scumming, where you'll use a couple keys to go ahead and check what is maybe down one path, in one room, inside of a chest. And then if it's not something you need, you can always reset, get your keys back, and you have the information you need, but it didn't cost you your keys. So very useful little tidbit here that we'll probably see made use of. Tudos making use of those hover boots as well. This is one of the ways to access the courtyard that we discussed a little bit earlier, and it's going to make doing this floor master check all the easier. Dukes, it sounds like the chat is out for blood, wanting Tudos to have to go for 50 skulls.
Well, we could go at least for that 30 ice trap if we wanted to complete, ice traps here.
I'm not sure I've ever seen a seed where every ice trap was found. Tudos, you have a chance to make history here.
I'm pretty sure I know a guy that's found a lot of the ice traps in the seeds he's played.
So one other little bit of quality of life here. You wouldn't know it just by watching this, but if you look at them side by side, this push speed, as slow as it may seem, believe me when I say it is much, much faster than it was in vanilla Ocarina of Time, which is always nice. And another little interesting tidbit here is that those blocks do require strength for you to push. Tudos kind of mentioned this earlier, but we needed the Goron bracelet in order to push this, which is, odd because nowhere in the text of the game itself does it say that the Goron bracelet allows you to push these giant blocks. It's more of a scenario where the game expects you to have it, so it's just kind of built into the blocks themselves. So another little interesting tidbit there, you do at least need the Goron bracelet, even though Adult Link doesn't actually use the Goron bracelet. So again, just another example of something inside of Ocarina of Time that's given new light shown upon it by this format. Take a peek there, and if you are just joining us, the reason why Tudos is skipping some of these chests, there is a setting on called chest size matches content. It's a very useful setting where the small keys are found in the blue pattern chests, the smaller ones, and the boss key that we found earlier was in a large blue pattern chest. The useful progression items can be found in large regular brown chests, and consumable items can be found in the small brown chests. So we're at the point now where Tudos is probably going to skip most of those smaller chests, which is why you saw him take a peek at one, decide he didn't want it, and walk back the other way. But it's just a nice, efficient way to go through. It's a setting that's more recently been adopted in the standard rule sets, but I'll be honest, after playing enough of this, it's going to be very difficult for me to go back to any other setting.
Chest size matches contents is really nice. You just get like, oh wow, there's a big chest right here. I know it's going to be something good. Okay, never mind.
The third bow!
I was kind of trying to talk myself into thinking that was going to be something good, but the seed had other ideas.
It always does. This is another interesting room as well, because there are some seeds where you might think that you just don't need to get, don't need to beat those skulls, or the, sorry, not skulls, the Stalfos on the bottom floor, but you actually do have to beat them in order to get through this room as well. And then of course you have to beat these three So it's kind of an interesting example of a gauntlet and one of the few of its kind inside of Ocarina of Time. As you go through these dungeons, you kind of start to realize that not a lot of these dungeons feature a lot of fighting, and I always thought it was very interesting that your very first adult dungeon, the Forest Temple, is the one that gives you all of these very perilous fights with the Stalfos. A Stalfos jump slash will take Tudos out at this point, too. It's 3 hearts of damage, so sitting on 2 1/4 right now, a little perilous, but he's got a fairy, so he's probably not sweating it too much.
I believe it's actually 2 hearts with the jump slash, not 3, but it's still treading pretty close, right? Only have a 1/4 heart left after one.
One other kind of interesting thing about Forest Temple as we start to approach the back half here is you do need to beat all of the Poe sisters as well. You need to get rid of the 3 in order to make the final purple Poe appear. And of course, you need all 4 of the Poes down in order to get to the bottom area. So even if you found everything you needed, you found a boss key, you found all the regular keys, you would still need to go through the entire dungeon in order to beat all of the Poes. So, truly is a dungeon that you cannot escape a full clear of, but fortunately, it's actually kind of a nice change of pace. There's not a lot of thought that has to go into this dungeon, so as you're figuring out what this hint means and what that item there could mean and what in the world I'm gonna do next, it's sometimes a nice breather, if you will.
Yeah, right now I'm kind of thinking about what my next move is going to be here, because I do have options.
I believe we have a Epona song, so there's the option to go out to GTG and cross the desert. Plenty of checks, miscellaneous checks about Hyrule. We did find out that Lake was foolish earlier, but certainly plenty of options here, and this is kind of the part in most seeds where you've beaten a couple of your dungeons, all of the obvious choices at this point you've kind of exhausted, so you do have to kind of stake a claim, put a line in the sand, and figure out where you want to go next. So this is always the part where it's really kind of fun to get some insight into what the runner's thinking, so be leaning heavily on you for that, Tudos.
Yeah, and again, I have some options, and I think I know what I'm going to be doing once I beat Forest Temple here. I kind of have a path in mind, which of course I'll share once I beat the boss.
If you beat the boss.
That is a good question, isn't it?
Really underrated portion of Ocarina of Time, I find at least, is as time has gone on, I've really appreciated how good its boss fights are, in the sense that none of them are hugely cinematic, which might be a drawback for some, but nearly every boss in Ocarina of Time can be some variation of one-cycled or very quickly two-cycled with precise timing and knowing a couple of really nice tricks. And there are some boss fights in particular. We'll be fighting against Baronade later on in the seed, where if you know everything you need to do, it can go very, very quickly. Engel demonstrated a very masterful Volvagia fight in our last episode that you can watch for a very, very fast fight there on a somewhat tricky boss. Even Twin Rova, as pesky and difficult as she can be. There's plenty of ways to mitigate those factors as well. So I do like how fast some of the bosses go once you kind of gain mastery over them, and it really feels good to get a one cycle on a tricky boss.
I don't have Biggoron swords, so I'm not going to be able to one cycle Phantom Ganon here. Supposedly there is a setup to do with the Master Sword, but I don't know if it's legal. Well, it probably is, but I'll get the 2 cycle and that's fine. And this part isn't exactly very exciting. This first part here is basically the same way you play this as a kid. You just find Ganon coming in, and then you just arrow them.
Fighting Phantom Ganon with the beautiful music of Hyrule Fields playing in the background. Oh, narrowly missing the 2 cycle, but a very controlled 3 cycle, so not a lot of time lost there. Very nice.
One trick you can do to speed up that second part there, you probably noticed, was I was firing my bow at him. He will usually begin his tennis ball phase right after blocking my shot there and then just going in.
I believe this is our first medallion dungeon now we're done with.
Yep, indeed.
Yep. That's 1 down, 5 more to go, chat. Just a reminder what the overview is. We do need to beat Water, Deku, which we need a Kokiri sword to enter. Jabu, Shadow, and Spirit still. So a lot of those dungeons we're missing 1 or 2 items to beat, unfortunately.
Most people don't know this, but there's actually 2 hint stones by the Deku tree here. One is on the left side, one is on the right side, and you kind of have to kind of sneak your way around them to get to it.
There's a lot of hint stones in this game where once I learned about their locations, I was like, really? What was the thought process here? But Tudos, we talked a little bit about what your plan is going to be. You said that you would reveal it after you beat Phantom Ganon. You did narrowly manage to defeat Phantom Ganon, so what is the plan from here on?
Well, the ultimate plan is to beat Ganondorf to save Hyrule. Thanks for asking.
Well,
but seriously, so the plan is we got a hint earlier that Gerudo Training Grounds is on the path to Queen Goma. So what that means, I'll probably get a Kokiri sword there, I could get a slingshot there, or I could get an item that could lead me to one of those 2 items there. So I think it's a very good idea to head out there next to see what I can get.
Definitely a good plan of action. Again, reading those hint stones just helps us narrow down our checks here, so we kind of can know which way to lean and also which areas that we don't want to pay attention to at all. Earlier, we got a hint stone that said Lake Hylia is foolish, so Tudos knows that he doesn't need to even bother going over there for any checks. And for those of you just joining us, because I do see some questions about what kind of the goal is. Our goal is to defeat Ganon. We spawn the bridge by getting 6 medallions. The dungeons that give us those 6 medallions are shuffled. So for example here, when we beat the water temple, we're actually going to get the green or the forest medallion instead of the blue medallion. When we beat Jabu Jabu, we're gonna get the purple or the shadow medallion instead of getting that Zora Sapphire. So the rewards for which dungeons are all ship shop shuffled here, which means there are different required dungeons to beat every single time we play through this.
And to add to that, Tudos did mention earlier the 3 spiritual stones. Gathering those does give you access to the Song of Time cutscene where you pick up the Ocarina of Time. The Ocarina of Time itself isn't anything special in Randomizer, at least not under these settings. But the song check that it gives you might be a song that you need in order to finish the game. And in the event that happens, we will need to beat all of the dungeons, not just the medallion dungeon.
Thankfully, we read, I believe that was Serenade in the seed, so that is never a required song.
That's a shake-up. So, yeah, walk us through this, Tudos. You were kind of banking on getting something related to that in GTG, but now,
So this is interesting now because I have the Kokiri sword. Now there's 2 items that are required by logic to beat Deku Tree. One is the Kokiri sword because otherwise Mido is going to be in your way. The other one is the slingshot, which you need to complete the basement normally. Now, I'm becoming a child anyways, you can see, because there's a little trick you can do, and obviously if you watch Ocarina of Time speedruns before, you've probably seen it. It's called B1 skip, where you can skip around the slingshot requirement in the basement in order to get right to Queen Goma.
gonna save quit here, which will pull us back to our spawn location. Child spawn, for this seed anyway, is set inside of Link's house. But the sword pulled out of the rusty Tektite grotto will make this nice. There is no way to skip Mido here, unfortunately, so we do need the Kokiri sword, as mentioned. A fun fact, you don't actually need the Kokiri sword to do anything inside of Deku Tree. So there have been variations of rule sets where you could just walk right up to Deku Tree with nothing but a shield, a couple Deku nuts, a stick or two, and just get through it all right there. But you know, that was very powerful and very centralizing, being able to do a whole dungeon without any item requirements. So the Kokiri sword has been shuffled back in and made required for this. But again, this is a dungeon that has a lot of very, very quick checks. So we still need a number of items, as Nuke said earlier. So makes sense, if you can clear it, why not? And decide where we go from here.
I do want to give a shout out to our live tracker, who is doing all the tracking on the wonderful whiteboard for us. Thank you, Sent.
Yes, and although you cannot use this tracker that we have tonight when you play your own Ocarina of Time Randomizer, there are a lot of great trackers out there. And I definitely recommend using one when you're starting off, especially. I also recommend using a map tracker. That's going to help you see which checks are available when you find certain items, and definitely will make it a lot smoother of an experience. Because you'd hate to get to that point where you've been playing a seed for hours and you just forgot that a certain check existed when you're starting off here.
Yeah, there are, in typical settings, hundreds and hundreds of checks to remember the location of. And absolutely no reason to stress out over learning all of them at the start. People, even at the highest levels, still absolutely make use of trackers, because there's, especially if you play enough of these seeds, it can start to bleed together and be, you know, very, very difficult to keep track of what's actually legitimate in the heat of the seed, especially if you're racing and there's all the nerves. So, by all means, please make use of them.
I'm so glad that scale was real.
Yeah, if we got, I mean, I know that we've been counting along at this point, and we should know that that couldn't have been a fake scale, but ZOOTR finds a way.
All right, up here, we've got a basement 1 skip coming up. Because again, we didn't get that slingshot, but even if we did, it does take a long time to go through the back. So we're gonna use a nice little skip here to make it just go faster. And if Tudos will explain what's going on while he's doing that skip.
Yeah, so there's actually 2 ways to do the B1 skip that are part of the rules, I guess. The first one is with the bomb jump that I showed off before. So we'll just jump up like that. The other way without bombs is we have this like nice little corner, and this is kind of a classic trick that a lot of beginners learn. So you kind of roll yourself in the corner right here, this little seam. You backflip twice, backflip or side flip right, side hop left. And we are going to align the left side of our Kokiri sword button there with that kind of white line at the top of your screen that goes up and down. And put that about right about there. We're gonna Z target, neutral roll, release, pause buffer, and I messed it up. We're gonna try that again.
It's one of those things where when you're forced to explain it as you do it, it becomes infinitely harder, and you realize, wait, now that I'm trying to remember how to do it instead of just doing it, it messes up. But when it does work, it looks a little bit like that. B1 skip. Feels so good when you finally learn it. And it is a classic example, kind of as Nuke said, of a trick that, again, only saves you time in the long run, right? The game expects you to have a slingshot at this point, so if at any point you were supposed to come here, the game would expect you and have provided you with a slingshot. Whether you grabbed it or not, I guess, is a different story, but again, all it actually ends up doing is saving time. So just, again, a very, very classic example of really what the glitches and jumps and tricks are in this format.
I kind of showed off there. Again, you can get broken stick, which I showed off how to get earlier in the stream to beat Gomo without the Kokiri sword. Not super applicable in this rule set because you need to move mine with the Kokiri sword, but there is an option with Randomizer where you don't need to have the Kokiri sword to come in here, in which that would be useful in that case.
And another medallion dungeon out of the way. So that scale that we got does give Tudos some interesting options here. The scale, once again, another item that got a lot of new life because of the randomizer format. In vanilla Ocarina of Time, the scale primarily is just used in Zora's Domain to get down to Lake Hylia, to then go and grab Ruto's letter from Lake Hylia, and then dive back down. But here, it is a very, very useful kind of transportation tool that can be used to get all the way over to Zora's River, and also can sometimes be the only way that you can logically access Zora's Domain. If you can get down to Lake Hylia, you can use that to get up to Zora's Domain, even if you don't have Zelda's Lullaby. And there will be plenty of seeds where you'll be required to do just that. So again, in vanilla Ocarina of Time, only gets used maybe once or twice, but here you can expect to use it, and it's a very handy item to have.
All right, so my plan now is I kind of want to clear some child checks in case I find the boomerang as a child, because then I don't need to become a child again unless I need to do Child Spirit Temple later on. That might be early, we'll see.
I know we found out that GTG isn't really going to help us get to beating Goma at this rate. But do you still think that's somewhere you're going to head to soon, Tudos?
I think so. So the cool thing about chest-sized matches contents, you got that big maze in the middle of Gerudo Training Grounds. So even without any keys or even doing any checks, you can just literally go through the door and look at the central maze, and all of a sudden you have a lot of chests you can see to see if there's a big chest in there. Ooh, I'm glad I came here.
That's a dungeon now that we can do. Again, we have to do that water temple to get our forest medallion that is required, and we need that long shot in order to get to Morpha.
And building off of that, I will have the forest medallion, the fire medallion, and the water medallion, which actually gets us another song check, which is the Nocturne of Shadow song check. And we were actually told by a gossip stone earlier that that is going to be the Requiem of Spirit. So not only am I going to have another medallion, I'm now going to have an easy way to get out to Spirit Temple now instead of having to walk there all the way.
Which I believe Spirit is another required dungeon here, so that's definitely helping Tudos kind of beeline it straight to those dungeons now here.
I'm going to do a couple more checks as a child because I have the scale now. Again, this is me kind of being like, oh, if the boomerang is here, then I can just go ahead and do Jabu right now. But if it's not, I'll get a bunch of these checks out of the way and don't have to worry about them later.
You're definitely needing less and less items here, though, chat. We're getting closer and closer to what we call Go mode, which is where we have all the required items to beat the seed. We're still missing a couple key ones, like our boomerang, our light arrows, and our magic. And Din's Fire. I believe we still need Din's Fire here.
Yep. And then the mirror shield is the last thing we need for Spirit Temple.
Once Tudos has all those items, we'll be able to just go ahead and get to Ganon. Thankfully, though, with ZOOTR, if you are able, let's say Tudos is able to finish his 6 medallion dungeon, so it still hasn't found those light arrows. If you head up to Ganondorf, he'll actually tell you which area has your light arrows, which is really, really nice just for if you're already at that point where you've beaten all your dungeons, you can at least narrow it down to which area is going to have those lights for you.
Unfortunately, the hints here were repeat hints. With the hint settings we're using, we have duplicate hints for every single hint in the seed. So that's why we're seeing the same one multiple times, even though we're using different hint stones.
There are 40 gossip stones that can be accessed, so we will have a few repeats, as Tudo said, that we'll likely come across, but there are 5 Path of hints, which are the most powerful hints to find, and 3 foolish hints. And of course, those do have the duplicates as well, but those typically are the ones that Tudos is still looking for at this point. He's certainly gotten a lot of the progression out of the way from some of those earlier hints. We've sort of resolved what those were pointing to, but even late in the seed, if you can get a little bit more direction, it's always nice. There's a kind of a point in a lot of seeds that we affectionately call casino mode, where we need one more item and we don't have any direction on where it's at, and we know that it could be anywhere.
That's you dread seeing the seeds where you get up to the point where you can get to Ganon, but what you're missing is your magic instead of your light arrows. Because Ganon's not going to hint to you where those are.
He's not quite that
I
nice.
messed up what I was going to do, but that's okay.
We still have time.
I'm curious to see if this will work. I don't think it will. These roofs have to all be next to each other.
Yeah, they look a little too spread apart here, unfortunately.
If I get a 2-pack here, I might be able to do it.
Oh,
Yeah, time to spare.
Wow.
Not much time to spare,
Actually,
but
I planned that. I totally planned that.
so there are variants of that where we make use of the flame storage trick that Tudos demonstrated earlier to kind of do that little torch run in the reverse order after grabbing the rupees. So Tudos just freestyled a way to complete it in a completely different way, and one thing that he was correct about is if those rupees had been much more spread out, that would not have been doable. So a little luck never hurt anybody, but he also executed well.
all right, Tudos, where are we to next?
So normally, after doing that as a child, I would dive into Lake Hylia and do some Lake Hylia checks as a child. But we were hinted earlier that Lake Hylia has no items that we need. It was hinted barren, so I can just totally forego that, and we're just become a child again. I think they're actually going to stick. Almost my original plan here. I want to first check the Spirit Temple song. Actually, I can't do that. I'm going to, because I can't get out there yet. I'm going to go to Water Temple. That was the plan. And then I can go to Spirit Temple. Got a little bit too far ahead of myself there, but we have the long shot, so we can just go ahead and head down to the Water Temple. Gotta ride down though, because Serenade of Water is on the Song of Time, which requires 3 stones.
And when Tudos says that he can't get out to Spirit Temple here, getting to Spirit Temple, it is kind of a puzzle in and of itself. So there's a number of ways that you can get out, and it starts with finding a way to cross the bridge in Gerudo Valley. So you can, of course, bypass everything I'm about to tell you if you have the Requiem of Spirit, of course. That's the easiest way to get to Spirit Temple. We'll just warp there. But in the event that you do not have that, you can use Epona here to go ahead and hop across the giant gap. You can also use the long shot to long shot across that gap too. And of course we have both of those options available right now, but you won't always have that luxury. Then once you get across and finish everything inside of the GTG area that you would like to do and the Gerudo Fortress area, crossing the Haunted Wasteland, the first gap can be crossed with either the hover boots or the long shot. Again, which we have both of. Or it can also be crossed with, again, if you happen to know exactly where all the seams are, you technically don't need either of those, but logically you're expected to have those. And then at that point, you're expected to have both magic as well as the Lens of Truth in order to follow the ghost guide to get out to Spirit Temple. Again, if you happen to know where all the loading zones are, you can just do what we call lensless wasteland, where you simply cross without needing the lens. But sometimes if you know that you need an item and you know that it can't be in a certain area like Spirit Temple or like Desert Colossus, sometimes you opt to save that until as late as you can, knowing that you can't logically access it.
And again, I would definitely consider lensless wasteland more of a advanced trick for these. That's something you're generally going to learn later on. So definitely not something you need to know to complete Ocarina Time Randomizer, but it is useful when you do know it.
I want to mention something that happened with the big pulse check there. So in Ocarina of Time Randomizer, it's actually modified so that you only need to turn in 1 big Poe to get the check there, which in vanilla game, it's the bottle. I actually made a mistake with the first big Poe I killed because I did not have a free bottle, so the big Poe just went away. So I had to get rid of my fairy in order to capture a Poe. So I went ahead and went to a second location with a big Poe and got him that way.
have.
A couple of times Path to Twin Rova.
How about that bottle? Yeah, Nukes, why don't you go ahead and explain what Temple of Time Twin Rova could mean in this scenario?
Yeah, so Temple of Time, there's not many checks there. We do get the Prelude song check, and that's once you get the Forest Medallion. You'll get a song off of that. And you also get an item from the Light Arrow cutscene. So, knowing that Requiem's really the only song that leads to Spirit Temple. So, that might not be a direct thing there, but there could be another song that gives us a check that will lead to, I don't know, our Mirror Shield. We also could get Mirror Shield off of our Light Arrow cutscene, or an item that leads to that.
It also has really interesting implications for the location of the magic meter. So we talked earlier about how the game expects you to, if you're going to cross the desert to get to Desert Colossus, have the magic meter and the Lens of Truth. If Temple of Time is Path to Twin Rova here, then and it ends up being Requiem of Spirit and nothing on the Light Arrows cutscene, then it would mean that that is the only logical way that Tudos is going to be able to get to Desert Colossus, which is kind of an interesting implication. Again, we're going here to Water Temple, so we'll be able to get that, because we do know that we're going to get 2 songs as a result of beating Water Temple, but that mystery will be unveiled before your very eyes.
All right, I went out of my way to check this hint zone to try to find that last hint for beating a dungeon, and that was Lost Woods' Path to Morpha. And if we go way back to the beginning of the seed, we actually got iron boots from one of the Deku scrubs in there as a child. So that's what that was referring to.
All right, entering here into Water Temple, which I know is a very beloved temple to many people who played this game as a child. I think this is a lot more interesting, though, in Randomizer. Unfortunately, there's still not a lot of value coming here because there's only 4 items here, but we do need to beat this temple in order to get to Ganon's castle for this seed.
Now, Water Temple was, like, if you were a child, you remember playing this dungeon as a child, it was a very confusing dungeon because there was the hidden check under the central pillar that kind of made things interesting in regards to clearing all of the items. Obviously, with Randomizer, the keys are all over the place. So the logic for this area can be kind of interesting on where you would want to go for the check first.
One of the other big things to note about how we play this in Randomizer is there are some very nice jumps that you can make use of to access a couple of the, I guess, the places where you control the water, the Zelda's Lullaby plaques, whatever they actually are, the places that you go to just the water level. There's a couple really nice jumps that you can make that you're not expected to be able to make in the vanilla game. And you actually don't even need the hover boots for a couple of those jumps, but the hover boots certainly make it an easier proposition. So we've got ways of navigating and maneuvering about this temple that we certainly wouldn't have had when we were children unless you were just that good. A very nice little trick there by Tudos, knowing that this isn't necessarily a check that he needs, but the hover boots you can see right there, a great way to side hop, get onto that. Normally you would be expected to lower the water all the way and then bring it back up to the medium level in order to swim up to that, but once again, that ain't no problem.
And once again, big shout out to the added feature for Zelda Ocarina of Time Randomizer, which is the boots on D-pad. So you don't have to constantly be pausing throughout Water Temple in order to take your iron boots on and off.
Yeah, definitely makes this a lot more doable and a lot less tedious than all that. That was very annoying in the vanilla game, not having to go into the menu every single time.
So even this jump that Tudos is about to do here with the hover boots does not require the hover boots. There's a nice little setup that you can do to get around, but this is a great example of the save scumming that we talked about earlier. You'll notice that Tudos saved his game right before he came on this path. He knows that that's a key now, but he's going to go ahead and reset now because he has 2 keys, and there's some other paths that he can go here that require a couple of keys for him to check. So I know it was a while back where we talked about that, but essentially, save quitting in a dungeon will always stick you back out to the front, and in Water Temple, that's very handy given that this is sort of a central conduit for a lot of other mobility around the temple. So yet another reason why this format gives a little love to Water Temple. It's just a big old playground that we get to maneuver around as we choose. And I guess it's also kind of worth noting as well that because we can see basically everything we need to see with only the 2 keys, there are a lot of scenarios where just getting 2 keys here in Water Temple is sometimes all you need in terms of keys. It can just kind of become a hunt for the boss key at that point. There are certain circumstances where you'll need to find more than just the 2 keys, but those circumstances are somewhat few and far between, just depending on boss key location and if there's a progression item somewhere behind keys as well.
I do have a question in chat about, are there any rules of thumbs about how many hearts you need to not drown here? Or maybe like what the logic is for going into the water here? We do have, I don't think we have, do we have a tunic here for the Zora tunic? There is settings that do have to do with the tunics in this game, so the game will expect you to have an ability to get a tunic to do some of these areas.
This is the only check that you need the tunic for in these settings.
Yeah, and there's some of that also logic with the fire temple there, where you're gonna need the game will expect you to have gotten a tunic to get to certain parts of the fire temple due to that timer as well.
Oh, I'm gonna die.
I was about to ask if you still had a fairy here, but you did have to give up the fairy earlier in order to get that big pose. So if you do have a fairy in that scenario, you can kind of strong arm it and go down, and the fairy will pick you right back up and reset your timer from there.
And you know, I had a red potion this whole time. So now that's kind of sad. So we're gonna go ahead and try that again. Now, getting a tunic for that is actually in logic because I have the Giant's Wallet. You can buy a Zora tunic for 300 rupees in Zora's Domain.
Kudos will drink his red potion this time. The amount of time that you have, and this applies to the Fire Temple as well in Death Mountain Crater, you will always have more time if your hearts are full. So it doesn't look at your max hearts, it does look at how many hearts you currently have when you enter your time area. And you can actually do some little tricks to reset your timer as well based on taking off your iron boots at the right time. So you see Tudos is going to get a few seconds back here. And every second does count in these. Very difficult to do with any less than 5 hearts.
All right, that was a lot cleaner.
I'm gonna say that was about as quickly as you'll see that fight done. So nice job to Tudos there, and a very healthy reward there. The prize, of course. And as we mentioned earlier, Forest Temple is a dungeon where you will have to do every part of it, but Water Temple is maybe the prime example, with Fire Temple being right up there with it, of you could find the boss key on your very first check and just get on with it and get on out. So we will see how much of this, well, I guess we could just ask, Tudos, how much of this are you planning to do?
I'm just going to go to the boss, and I can always come back later if necessary.
I feel like that's typically how players tend to attack the water temple here. Again, there's only 4 possible items in here, and they might just all be junk items. So it's usually not worth the time to check out all of those, because it's not very item density here. Item dense. We tend to kind of look for, when we're deciding which areas to explore, at how many items are there if we don't have any hints. And this is usually a pretty low spot.
Why, you don't like going deep water temple early on?
Not usually on my list of things I want to do for the day. But it does happen sometimes.
So Morpha, another boss fight that, again, once you understand its mechanics, you can have a lot of fun with this boss. Really, one of the few bosses that you actually bully, and I do mean that in the most literal sense of the word you can imagine here. So once we kind of pluck this nucleus out, we're going to escort this thing all the way over to the corner, very nice and gently. And, you know, once it's over here, we'll just be doubly sure. Knock it there. Stab, 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 and it is not getting out. And that's your boss fight, everybody.
There's actually a faster way to do that fight, and I missed it. You can try to go for hook-shotting Morpha before it does the little tentacle form there. And instead of hook-shotting him into the corner, you can just hook-shot him into the door instead, and you can kill him even faster that way.
All right, another required dungeon down, and also looking like a good time to take our second wellness break here. So Tudos, if you'd like to count down so we can pause the timer here.
Sure. I'll go ahead and wait for this cutscene to be over, and... Oh, we have to watch Lake be filled, of course.
Oh, yeah. I always forget this is like one of the longer cutscenes we do have to watch.
All right, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop.
All right, chat. Here at Hotfix, we do like to take wellness breaks, so we are just going to take a quick little break here, but don't you worry, we'll be back with more Ocarina of Time randomizers to make sure that we can go and get rid of Ganon here. So make sure you get up, stretch, maybe grab a snack, grab a drink, and we'll be right back. Hey, all you cool cats and gamers. Welcome back to episode 2 of Ocarina Improv, the GDQ Hotfix show special that dives in depth into Zelda Ocarina of Time Randomizer, or ZOOTR for short. I'm your host, Nuclear Reaction, and tonight I have 9 whole grains and Tudos with me, playing through a Ocarina of Time Randomizer seed and breaking it down so that you can understand kind of the basics of how this all works and some of the tricks you can use. Before we get back into the seed, though, I do have a couple announcements. If you're watching on YouTube, go to twitch.tv/GamesDoneQuick if you're interested in looking at our live content, starting most nights at 7 p.m. Eastern and weekends at 1 p.m. Eastern. Also, your subs and bits help support weekly Hotfix content. If you're enjoying Hotfix, feel free to support the channel by subscribing or cheering. Also, tune in this Sunday starting at 1 p.m. Eastern for PB Prefacip, a show about runners on the precipice of their new PB doing new live PB attempts, followed by It's Dangerous to Go Alone, a show about co-op speedruns. All right. Just to catch everyone up here, Tudos and Nine, what do we have going on right now? What have we done and where are we going?
Yeah, so it was a very productive last hour of gameplay. Our last break that we took, we were just starting Forest Temple, very quickly moved through Forest Temple, and as we were going about looking through Hyrule Field for some random checks, maybe going out to Gerudo Training Grounds, we found the Kokiri Sword, which was one of the items we needed. Judas very promptly went back to Child, went through the Deku Tree, and then after quickly getting through that dungeon, came back out and came to Water Temple, which was part of the original intent. We've just finished the Water Temple there with a very nice and flashy boss fight. And Tudos, what are we going to do now?
So now I actually got a hint right before I came into Water Temple here that the Temple of Time was path to Twinrova. And there are 2 checks in the Temple of Time that we can get. One is the Light Arrows cutscene, which requires the orange and purple medallion, which we have neither of those, so we can't get that one yet. And the other one is a song that requires just the green medallion. We do have that. We just got it from being Water Temple. So I'm going to head there next to see what that song's all about, see if it helps us get something for Twinrova.
All right. Yeah, let's get into that, Tudos, whenever you're ready to count us down and we'll get started again.
Sure. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Now, normally, right after beating Water Temple, I would shoot the sun for that check. That normally gives you the fire arrows, but it was hinted. Lake Hylia, all of it was hinted barren earlier, so I don't need to check it.
So interesting to note that Saria's song is actually something that we needed in order to access Forest Temple. So we mentioned earlier we did the fun little Mido skip to get past Mido, but on the other side of Mido next to Forest Temple was the Minuet of Forest. So we can't have accessed that song without getting past Mido, and logically you need Saria's song in order to get past Mido. So the hint that we got about the Temple of Time leading to Twinrova, now we could think, all right, well, the Temple of Time song that we got was actually the Saria song, which means that it could be anything that's behind Forest Temple. And as we see right there, the Requiem of Spirit was a song that we needed to beat Forest Temple in order to access on this Burning Kakariko cutscene, as this cutscene is only unlocked by getting the Forest Medallion, the Fire Medallion, and the Water Medallion. And what a prize to find on 20 Skulls. This is like 5 minutes right there, and Tudos is basically finished what he needed.
And I can tell you right now, there's an even better prize on 30 Skulls.
I mean, wasn't that our goal to get all the ice traps tonight?
I mean, I could still. So with the boomerang, I also have Ruto's letter. I'm just gonna head straight to Jabu's belly. We can beat that for another medallion. I think the fastest way is going to be the save quit. There's a very... Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I do see kind of an important question in chat here. How is the randomizer for a casual player? Many tricks needed to learn. You do not need to know any of these tricks to do the randomizer. It does help it go faster, but many of us started at not so quote-unquote fast times. I know both myself and Nine have said previously that our first seeds took about 13 hours, where now they average around 2.5, 3 hours. So definitely takes time, but you got to start somewhere. And you can add these tricks as you go along. A lot of them are actually not too difficult to learn, but you can do it at your own pace. It's a lot of fun.
It is, and I'll go so far as to say that I've met many people who have never played vanilla Ocarina of Time who are playing ZOOTR now. So to the knowledge that you have to get into this, you truly can figure it out as you go along, and as we've alluded to a couple times, you can adjust basically everything regarding this. We are playing a pretty standard Season 5 setting, which is a group of rule sets that the community has agreed upon and put together and is kind of widely distributed. But you can start with max health, you can start with bombs, you can start with anything that you would like to get the feel about it. So there is still, of course, a little bit of knowledge that goes into it. There are some checks that are a little tricky just to know where they are, but as we've mentioned before, there are map trackers that you can utilize in order to make sure that you know where all of those are, and a number of other great tools that you can make use of.
Yeah, another big thing too I see mentioned in chat that's a good reminder is you can also get a spoiler log for your seed. So if you get stuck or you want to kind of see what the seed wanted you to do, what path it wanted you to take, you can always look into there, and that is a great tool to help either help you learn or help you get through if you get stuck at any point.
And Gizmos has a good question in chat. Why are they called checks? Because all of the items, freestanding heart pieces, songs, all of these things have been shuffled about, we need to check the different chests, or we need to check these areas to find out what's there. And so we abbreviate that as checks. We are checking to see what is there. And on the comment of spoiler logs, I will freely admit that I would not have been able to beat that 13-hour seed that had very, very mundane settings, I might add. I know some people who may be somewhat familiar with seeing runners do very wild settings and beat them in 13 hours. This was basically the seed that Tudos is playing, and it still took me 13 hours, and I still wouldn't have been able to beat it. I mean, how was I supposed to know what outside Ganon's castle meant? Come on.
Yeah, the more you, if you do really enjoy doing this, the more of these you do, the faster you're gonna get. You're just gonna learn kind of how it works a lot better, but that's why we're doing this now, to show you kind of the basics, so that way if you want to get started, it's a lot easier and a lot more attainable to do. I've also shared a couple times in chat, I'll do that again, a great link to help you get started. As well as links to all three of our Twitch channels. I know all three of us would be happy to help. If you want to stop by and ask questions. I myself run a lot of ZOOTR on my channel. 9 Whole Grains and Tudos do a few other things as well on their channel, but they also do run Ocarina of Time, and we're all happy to help you get into it.
Let's talk a little bit here about Jabu Jabu with regards to randomizer. So obviously you would normally find the boomerang inside of Jabu Jabu if you were playing in vanilla. This is about the part right here that you would be able to get to without the boomerang. It's only one check. So Jabu, if you don't have boomerang, is oftentimes a very, very risky and time-consuming process. Over on the right side of this room, and we'll probably end up going there, there is a switch that can be pushed down when Link is holding Rudo. But every other check here will require the boomerang, and it'll start with, of course, the first of these 3 tentacles that will knock down with the boomerang. But for a lot of seeds, this ends up being one of the final dungeons that you'll end up doing, or certainly one of the later half, simply because it does require a lot to get to it. It, of course, needs Rudo's letter, it needs the boomerang, it also typically needs Zelda's lullaby, and what a find there, another item that we needed.
We're definitely getting close to that go mode here.
So that's a big one. You need to have 6 medallions. and you only get hints to beat 5 of the medallion dungeons. And unfortunately, the Shadow Temple was left out of the hints this time. So basically, the Din's Fire could have been anywhere. Like, we would have had to check lots of different things, but fortunately, it just happened to be in here. Now we just need a magic, and then we can do Shadow Temple.
I will say it is a little odd to be this late in a seed and not have magic. It's a pretty painful item to have this late. So Tudos is going to show you some super advanced tech here, which is Rudo.
That poor Stingray had no chance. And then this next part of the dungeon is basically the same as it is in a vanilla playthrough here. We're just going to these tentacles. There's no real quick way to beat these. Just gotta throw your boomerang up. Taking Rudo with me though.
Yeah, so just a reminder for those who are maybe just joining us or haven't heard earlier on, our main goal here is to complete all the dungeons that give us the medallion rewards. So Jabu Jabu is one of those. Once we get all 6 of the medallion rewards, that will spawn the bridge to Ganon's castle. Then we need to go up to Ganon and defeat him. We will need the light arrows and magic and bow to do that as well, so that's always going to be required when we have to defeat Ganon. So that's also something we must do in conjunction to getting the 6 medallions, is to find the light, bow, and magic.
People are correctly pointing out in chat that the dissonance of having such a creepy dungeon right next to the easygoing vibes of Lon Lon Ranch. Only in Randomizer, folks.
Music Randomizer is a feature of Ocarina of Time Randomizer, and obviously doesn't add much to, like, obviously the logic itself. It's just a nice little cool feature that you can turn on along with, like, the tunic colors, for instance. That's just for fun.
All right, there's a neat little strat here. Tudos, if you want to explain this fight here.
Yeah, so this dude dies in one Deku Stick jump slash. I played it safe there by throwing the boomerang to stun him, but you can literally just get behind him like that, and you can just jump slash and he dies. And I believe we said this earlier, but the Deku Stick is pretty OP in this, and if you didn't know, it basically is a Master Sword as far as damage goes, so you want to try to use that as much as you can, even if you have the Kokiri Sword.
And also see questions in chat about why is Tudo skipping the small chests? We are playing with a setting called match size matches contents, which means that all the small chests are going to be items that aren't necessary for progression. So those are going to be mainly rupees and heart pieces, maybe Deku nuts, bomb refills. It could be bomb chews, which is helpful, but at this point of the run, we've got some health, we've got bombs, we don't really need to be checking those. We're looking for the big chests to give us progression.
If you're a new player, though, it's nice to check the small chest a lot because that will give you your health, your heart containers, things like that.
Yeah, definitely when you've played more Ocarina of Time, you might feel more comfortable with less health, but it's always worth checking those, especially you'll see runners in the beginning checking those chests for that reason, just to get a few more hearts here.
So we're entering one of the most aesthetically pleasing, sorry Tudos, just this boss in particular I think is one of the most enjoyable bosses to watch played well, if you wouldn't mind narrating it.
Oh, don't worry, I'll mess it up now. No, I'm kidding. So kill these tentacles, and we're going to try to kill these jellyfishes with nuts very quickly, and I missed, unfortunately. But if I was good enough, I would have gotten a second stun on it right before those jellyfish got in the way, and I would have been able to get rid of all of them with one Deku Nut. I also want to mention the trick I did before to get in here, which was I stood in a very specific spot so I could throw the boomerang and activate the switch without climbing that thing at the end.
At this point, this roll in as well that Tudos is doing is not just for show. It does get Baronade out of the ground just a little bit faster. So that's part of the reason why this is done in this fashion. And the power stabs there will bring it down even quicker. But that boss fight, when executed perfectly, it's very enjoyable to watch, and it takes advantage of, again, the Deku Nuts. We mentioned earlier that Deku Nuts do possess the ability to just outright defeat, destroy some enemies. Those are a couple of the enemies that it's able to do that for, and you can get in and out of that fight in, barely over 30 seconds if it's all executed perfectly. And it's, again, it's just another boss fight that is really fun and really repeatable and feels great once you start to figure it out.
So where are we headed next, Tudos?
Okay, so Spirit Temple is in play, obviously. That is one of our medallions, and we actually just got the Requiem of Spirit. I'm going to be checking a couple more of these previously locked Saria Songs checks as a child, and then I'll be heading out there. We still want to be hitting up as much checks as possible because we want to find the magic. That magic's going to let us do Shadow Temple. And we're also still missing the Mirror Shield, which will let us do Spirit Temple, of course. There's only 2 Saria Song checks in the game, and one's in Lost Woods, and one is in Child Goron City right next to it.
Yeah, it's honestly not a bad idea to get these checks now, so Tudos isn't going back and forth between child and adult, taking the time to, transform between the two. Since he's already here and he's already child and knows he needs several more items to finish the game.
And to kind of delve a little deeper as well, one of the reasons why these Saria Song checks, aside from just being convenient, are important is, if you all will remember, we had a Temple of Time. A Temple of Time is Path of Twinrova hint, which means that something we got in Temple of Time leads to eventually completing Twinrova. And we talked a little bit earlier about how it might have just been access to Forest Temple, which we needed to beat in order to get the Requiem of Spirit, which it appears that Tudos is going to make use of now. But there's so many circumstances in which you just want to make sure that it also isn't something else behind Saria's song. So it's a good way to clear that here. We're out at Desert Colossus now. There is a song to be grabbed out here. You can grab it either as child or adult in these settings. Simply jump in and jump out of Spirit Temple and you'll be able to get it. We're gonna go ahead and check this fairy fountain over here before we do that. But it is also worth noting that this is the only way that Child Link is able to reach this area. So if there's ever anything that you need in Child Spirit, you know you're going to need to get Requiem of Spirit in order to access it.
Well, I can't get any more money because my wallet's full. But
So we
I guess
throw it on the ground.
yeah. It's not like Twilight Princess where we're just like, oh, let's just put this back. Where we just throw it on the ground and walk away. That was actually hinted dead, the right hand of the Colossus here. But if that wasn't hinted, you can actually see if it was a big chest just by peeking up there.
A reminder that Tudos has not started the Skull Mask trading sequence yet for that ice trap, so chat, just kind of keep that in mind as you're trying to pressure Tudos into
Well, it might not.
doing painful things.
It might not be an ice trap. Maybe it's magic. Maybe I should check it.
Yeah, maybe it's a reverse situation where you go to grab the ice trap and it's actually magic instead.
Also to note, we did get Song of Storms there, but early on here, Tudos read that bottom of the well is barren, so there are a couple checks still locked behind that Song of Storms, but we won't have to enter bottom of the well at all.
Trying not to get my shield burned here. There we go.
So to kind of harken back to kind of a little previous line of thought that we talked about here, one of the things that really makes Spirit Temple interesting in this format is boss key location changes a lot of things, and the amount of progression that you can make as a child is actually somewhat significant. But these two checks here that Tudos is doing right off the start are the only two checks in this temple that Child Link exclusively can do. Now, there are ways and certain scenarios where you might not have a fire source or have a magic source, kind of like the scenario we're in now, which is why Tudos is going to go ahead and crawl through this and go into the main atrium of Spirit Temple. But if he had magic, he could actually just go back adult right now, know that he has a key to get into the main area, and clear everything else as adult Link. But again, we don't have magic. We desperately need magic, and there's some checks here that do require access to a fire source. And because adult Link cannot use the Kokiri sticks, or sorry, the Deku sticks rather, this is really our only option for the time being. So it's another dungeon that shuffling it about really does change how you attack it, and I think Spirit Temple gets the most out of the randomized format, personally.
I always thought it was annoying as a kid when I played this first time that adult Link couldn't use the sticks. But he could use the nuts.
And now that I play Rando, I'm even more annoyed by it.
I guess to be fair, he has a Master Sword, which, as we have just learned today, they do the same damage anyway, so...
Equal in power.
All right, here's where I'm going to do my flame storage trick again here. I don't need to kill the Beamos in the next room if I just do flame storage here. So you put your stick away while your stick is over the torch, and you get to put it in your pocket and take it with you, just like real life. Warning, do not try in real life.
I'm gonna say, Hotfix Shows does not condone having a lit torch in your pocket.
Please do not do that. Also, I know Tudos made that look very easy. The timing on that is very tight, so if he had gone a bit slower or had somehow missed hitting the torch, he would not have been able to light that first torch before the stick went out.
And I've definitely lost a torch there several times because I just flat out missed, or I just was a little bit slow on getting to that torch. All right, I'm gonna become an adult here in just a second, but I can check the couple storms checks here.
We discussed earlier. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and the reason why you can check if this one I'm doing right now is an adult, but there is the frogs one that is child exclusive, and I want to make sure I get that out of the way. And actually, you know what? Speaking of child exclusive checks, I should probably check the final one for the fans.
Oh wait, we can do frogs too.
I never found a frogs too hint, but actually that's when I was actually referring to chickens. But we can do frogs too, and I never found a hint for it, so I guess we're doing it.
We'll explain what frogs 2 is earlier, but just to kind of hit on a something really good that Nukes brought up well early on in the seed, talking about density and how eventually players will, as they're looking for things, try to push the areas that are most dense, where they have the best chance of just numerically finding an item that they need. There's also a really interesting balance of trying to do checks that if you don't do them now, you will incur like a pretty significant time loss to come back. So part of the reason that Tudos is doing this now, well, frogs, these frogs checks are only available as child, so that's part of it. But even the check that he did there back in Kokiri Forest, he could have done that as an adult, and he could also do the one on Death Mountain Trail as an adult, but there's a balancing act of doing it when it's most efficient and kind of playing for, if the worst case scenario happens, I'll still be okay.
Uh-oh.
That's another check.
Ooh.
Claim check for a check.
I never found the bigger on hint either.
So for anyone who didn't do this check as a child, like me, what in the world are we doing here, Tudos?
So you have to play all the non-warp songs minus Song of Storms. These guys, the Song of Storms check is a separate check. That's why I did that one first, and that got me the bigger on sword. But if you play all of the non-warp songs besides Song of Storms here, you will play what's called, what is it? The Fabulous Five Frogs Tenors game? I think that's what it is, which is actually another check, which is normally they give you a heart piece. And it's like a little game you have to play with the song at the end after I play these 5 songs here. Also, speaking of frogs, I'm not sure if it's on our tracker, but I think the eyeball tracker perler is like the coolest.
It is. Also want to note that our hint stones, there are certain checks that are quote unquote always hints. That means we're always going to get a hint for them. One of those we saw earlier was the skull mask hint. Those are always going to exist. Another one is this frogs check. Unfortunately, we never found that hint, so gotta check it here to find out what it is.
And speaking of checks to pull out a guide for,
I totally didn't do that just now. Totally not.
You are supposed to follow along with the butterfly and know which frog corresponds to which button. Don't do that. Just get a guide or write down the sequence. It's always the same. Please save yourself the pain of having to learn that.
That's so I, as well as most runners of this game, always have a notepad out where I put my hints in. Where's my path of the hero hints and such. That is something that is always on my notes. Is the Frogs 2 song, so I can just glance over if necessary. Not a bad thing to do because, yeah, you don't want to have to fully play that mini game ever.
Yep. It is one that is always lovely to find hinted having an item that you do not need. And it's hinted as an always hint, partially because, well, one, it's way out of the way, but also what you need in order to do that check. If you see that something is on that, like let's say you get a hint that a hookshot is on it, for example, you're in for the long haul, because as Tudo said, it does require 5 songs in order to do that check. So there's real big implications. And now, speaking of long checks, Tudos is doing everyone's favorite check.
So, Chicken's check is the longest check in the game that doesn't require any items. You can just do it at any time. And it is kind of a gamble to ever check this unless Kakariko is hinted as a place where you need an item. So, like, it's definitely possible that you can just abandon this and be fine, but like there's always a chance that there's an item that you could have had the whole time on Chicken. So if you orphan until the end of the game like I did this seed, I could be getting magic right now when I could have had it a long time ago.
There's also, we mentioned earlier how adult Kakariko has a lot of checks, and most of those checks that are here in child Kakariko you can get as an adult. So really there's not much reason to come here as a child unless you're going to bottom of the well or we're at this point. So you usually don't find yourself here as a child. I know some runners, if you spawn here as a child, they'll do chickens since they're already here. But as you can tell, this is definitely a longer check for just one item.
Oops.
And there is a question in chat about, I thought Anju required only a single chicken in randos. That is a setting. For the Season 5 settings we're using, that is not the case. But you can definitely, when you gen a seed, you can set it to even 0 chickens and just have to talk to her as a child.
In the Season 5 settings, you gotta catch them all. Got it.
Well, there you go.
So there is one more child check that I cannot get, and that is the treasure chest game, because I don't have magic. And there could be a magic lock magic, because there's 2 magics available, but we're not gonna go for that.
You're not going to play the one of 32?
Just for those who aren't quite sure what that means, there are 5 50-50 chances where you get a key that advances you in the next room in the treasure chest game, and if you get 5 in a row, you get the prize at the end. And logically, you need to have magic and the lens of truth in order to get there. I don't have magic, so it's logically not in play at the moment. I will say, though, I've had a seed where magic was hinted to be in the treasure chest game, and I didn't have magic yet, and that was the only item I needed to beat the game. And I actually went for the 1 in 32 chance to beat it and got it in like 5 tries. So it is a very extremely small chance of that happening, but it has happened.
It's crazy to think, but if you have enough money, meaning that you don't have to go farm money in between attempts, there are a lot of circumstances where the average time it takes to finish 1 out of 32 can be less time than it would take to go complete a dungeon, for instance, to do that. So in a lot of tournament settings, that is not allowed just because of, you know, eventually it does make it kind of a luck fest, but boy, oh boy, is it fun when you have just run out of options and you reach to the skies to hope.
Where are the possible link spawns? So in the settings, we are using the Season 5 settings, we actually turned off the spawns just so there's less confusion for new viewers. But In normal Season 5 settings, we actually do turn on random spawns. And how the spawns work, if you turn those on, is that it will always be in a place that you can reach from Hyrule Field with no items.
So as we've kind of talked through a couple times, we do need Mirror Shield in order to beat this dungeon, or beat Twinrova at least. And there is one check that is also locked behind Mirror Shield. 2 checks, I guess. But at this point, because Tudos knows he needs to beat this dungeon, there's very little penalty by completing, or there's very little penalty to completing everything that he can inside of this dungeon. If he doesn't find a progression item in here, it's not really that big a deal because he was going to do all of these checks anyway. And if he does find a progression item, and hey, there's maybe one right there, all the better. But it's a good habit to kind of understand when. And there's our magic. That is a lovely find.
As mentioned earlier, that is something we definitely don't want to find ourselves looking for at the end of the seed here. So very good to find that one.
So
yeah, and we are hightailing it out.
Yeah, and as of this point, we can beat Shadow Temple, and there's Mirror Shield checks next in Spirit Temple, so no reason to do those since I don't even have it anyway. So
hopefully Shadow Temple gives us what we need, because at this point, if I'm not mistaken, we just need to beat Shadow and Spirit.
That's
and
right.
Find our light arrows.
And remember, we have that Temple of Time Path of Twinrova hint still. That could have been pointing to Surya Song, but that also could be pointing to the item. And by beating Shadow Temple, we're going to be able to have access to that item.
Yes. And again, for those who missed it maybe earlier, let's say Tudos is able to beat all the dungeons, but still hasn't found the light arrows necessary to defeat Ganon. If we go up the tower and talk to Ganondorf, he will actually just tell us which area those light arrows are located, like a good villain, and then we can go and grab those pretty quickly. So that's not a bad last item to have left in the seed.
That's not the light arrows, but we can beat Bongo now. The ice arrows are pretty useless in the Ocarina of Time in general, except they do make the Bongo fight slightly easier. Otherwise, they're basically useless. They have more use in Majora's Mask, where you can make little like ice platforms on the water. This fight's usually a lot quicker, but I messed up. So, another logic quirk about Shadow Temple here, you only need Din's Fire, Magic, and Hookshot to enter this place. You don't actually need hovers to check those first 2 checks that I did. You do need hovers to get past into this next area here that I'm about to go to.
Yeah, so sometimes we'll find ourselves dipping into dungeons and doing a couple checks, like Tudos did with Spirit Temple. He may not have been able to complete Spirit Temple earlier, but was able to dip into there and find important items like magic.
Also in Randomizer, you get to experience Gerudo Valley Temple like we are right now.
Well, it's only fitting. You went out to the desert, you ended up getting your magic from there. Your magic allowed you to come in here.
Yeah.
You've been blessed by the desert, Tudos.
So obviously I skipped that Silver Rupees puzzle room there. You can just peek the chest there, and it was small, so I just skipped it. Easy peasy.
Yeah, that's the really nice thing about this chest side matches contents is you're able to skip a lot of these checks and a lot of these rooms just by peeking at what they are, what size they are.
Ooh, that was a little weird. I don't know what that was.
I love when the guillotine harmlessly brushes up against you from the front.
I see a question in chat about what do y'all mean by when you say hints? So the gossip stones in this game, in the rando version, gives us hints. So it may tell us which areas don't have anything important, or which areas lead to us defeating certain bosses, or even what specific checks, what are the items that are on those. So we utilize all those hints to help complete the seed faster.
And if you're curious what top level Ocarina of Time rando races look like, of course, once you reach that level, most of the runners have, quite good execution. You very rarely see any major slip-ups or any deaths. They can certainly execute all the tricks, but it really is interpretation of those hints and of the logic that puts some runners ahead of the others.
Uh-oh.
And what a hint so we know that Yeet Rock outside of Ganon's castle has nothing in it. We did get that hint earlier, I believe. But the gold gauntlets, that kind of narrows down where the light arrows might be. For those of you who may not remember, the light trial inside of Ganon's castle has a lot of checks in it. And there's always a chance that the light arrows can be inside of Ganon's tower, because we do not need the light arrows to enter it. There are certain seeds where you walk on up to Ganon and he tells you the light arrows from my castle. And when that happens, you almost always immediately pop down, toss the rock away, and go from there. And we will see the fairy pop out and save the day.
That was a little unfortunate.
And I do have a question in chat. Couldn't you potentially just do ISG and bomb hover over the gap if you don't have hover boots? Well, we kind of talked about this earlier, but there's a lot of glitches that are not allowed in competitive ZOOTR. ISG is definitely one of those, as well as bomb hovering. So, of course, you're welcome to use those if you're just playing on your own, but we're following what the competitive rules are here for what we can and cannot do.
And ultimately, those decisions are made partially because the spirit of randomizer is you do want as many, items to be relevant as possible.
Yes.
Ocarina of Time is so wonderfully built in the fact that a lot of its items are multi-purpose, and that's something that I think makes Ocarina of Time Randomizer work. I don't think, there are some games I think that really fit the randomizer format to a T, and I think because Ocarina of Time has so many multi-purpose items to it, it is able to kind of get away with the structure that it currently has. So that's part of the reason why when we say the spirit of randomizer, we want to have as many relevant items as possible, and any glitches that could make some of those items useless, we tend to try to avoid if at all possible.
And there are too, if you're someone who really likes, you know, you're already like a Zelda speed or a OOT speedrunner and you know a lot of glitches, there is the option when you're genning these to put on glitched logic. So feel free to try that out if that's something that you already know a lot of glitches for.
You can even turn on and off specific tricks too, and you can tell the program like, oh, I want this, and this in logic. Well, you can have all these tricks not be in logic to be the seed.
And again, to harken back to Engel's favorite point, that's the beauty. You can customize and play any way you'd like. I know there are some variations of randomizer bingo that people play, and we're feeling the love. But there are some variations of randomizer bingo that people will play that allow a lot of those tricks, and it's definitely not something that's frowned upon or looked down upon or anything like that. It's really just a bunch of us gamers trying to figure out the most enjoyable way to play this game the way we do. And I mean, even within just the standard rule sets, there's so many different ways. There's of course the races, but there's the co-op format where people can share information as they play the same seed. There's multi-world formats where you're able to pass items between multiple players playing different seeds, with all of them being connected within one giant web of logic. And my personal favorite that we've played is Pictionary ZOOTR, where somebody draws where items are and has the spoiler log open for their runner, but they are that's all they're able to do from a communication standpoint, and you just get some absolutely hilarious drawings and some just fun banter back and forth. But it's all built on the solid bedrock that is Ocarina of Time.
Speaking of solid bedrock, if you stand on the back of this boat here, these Stalfos will just walk right off the boat into the bedrock. I ain't scared. Goodbye.
And also, I want to note too, I've been posting the link, but there is a link in chat there for anyone who's interested in figuring out how to try this on their own. That link will help guide you through starting up your own ZOOTR seed, as well as the three of us are always happy to help if you ever want to come to our streams. I know I personally stream a lot of Ocarina of Time Randomizer, and I'm more than happy to help anyone get started, as I'm sure both of these fellows are as well.
Now, I have the boss key and a small key to get to the boss, but there are 3 more checks back here. We're still missing the mirror shield, so it's definitely worth checking these, and they're both small.
Wow, I never realized that the holes were so perfectly lined up for you to peek that.
Whenever you watch randomized, I feel like you always, even for like experienced players, you always learn something new.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the community of runners too is always pushing and finding new things. I mean, there's a pretty hilarious jump that was just recently discovered inside of Death Mountain Crater that kind of allows you to bypass needing an item. So,
Hey!
That's
the manager.
good. Well, hopefully, coming up soon here, then we get that mirror shield off a Temple of Time, or we're gonna have to be in casino mode.
We call that floor master, check the manager, because you have to go all the way to the back to talk to it. I'm kind of glad I found Naru's Love here because I lost my fairy in the big room. So in case I, for some reason, get really close to dying, I can just use it.
The bongo can be a pretty tricky fight. Of course, you do have to hit both of the hands. And we typically shoot at the gap where the eye is going to be. And then it's simply a matter of timing the crouch stabs.
Yes.
You see, Tudos lost the rhythm, was able to get it back, actually. A very nice recovery. That fight, as all fights do, goes a little bit easier if you have the Big Goron sword, but provided you can get the BPM down when you're fighting, you can kind of do that indefinitely. And again, a very nice one cycle with proper timing. So congratulations, Tudos. You didn't need the love after all.
Guess not. One more thing to note there. If you have the Big Round sword for that, once you get Bongo stunned, you can literally just mash crouch stabs and he will die. Ooh, we need this. For Master Sword, you need to mash in a rhythm, a specific timing, and I actually heard of people turning on metronomes for that fight specifically, just so they could one cycle with the Master Sword. All right, we're gonna go on a little adventure here before we go back to Spirit Temple. I just wanted to jump in the lava. That was my adventure. Oh no, I forgot to use ice arrows in the bongo fight, but basically the ice arrows stun Bongo's hand. Or I'm not sorry, stun. It freezes Bongo's hands. So Bongo will try to use the, once you freeze one, Bongo will try to use the other hand to like break the ice. And then you can just shoot the eye and stun him that way. This is the only use of the ice arrows in this game.
So there are instances in certain settings where you will not actually get the claim check at the start. You can go all the way back to the prescription. And for those of you maybe unfamiliar with the trade sequence there, the prescription is taken to King Zora, an unfrozen King Zora, importantly, which will give you the eyeball frog, which is why we have that cute little perler for the eyeball frog. And then the eyeball frog must be taken down to the lab in Lake Hylia, where it is exchanged for the world's finest eye drops, which can then be taken back to Big Goron, which then gives you the claim check. So there are seeds where Big Goron has something that you need, and depending on what item you can find any of the items along that path. You can have a pretty gnarly time getting all the way through.
If you need a fairy, just play Zel's Lullaby to a Gossip Stone and you'll get one. Easy. All right, so we are going back to the Temple of Time, and we did not get an item here.
Huh. I wonder... That's interesting.
Yep, so I think at this point we know that it had to be Saria's song to get to Forest Temple.
Yeah. Sometimes I completely forget that that's a thing because of Mito skip.
So let's try to think about the logic here. So, you can't beat Forest Temple without that. And there was no items for Twinrova and Forest Temple, but you need to get Requiem of Spirit from Nocturne. So that was probably the logic for that. So let me just kind of explain this further. Again, Temple of Time was Path of Twinrova. In Temple of Time, we got Saria's Song. Saria's Song let us get to Forest Temple. Forest Temple let us unlock the Nocturne of Shadow Song, which got us Requiem of Spirit. That was more than likely our logic there.
Yep, and that is where we got our magic meter as well, which is a pretty good indication that there's not another magic that we could have gotten, because if there was, we would have needed, or we could have used that rather in order to cross the desert normally, which would have meant that Requiem of Spirit would not have been required. So you'll can kind of see, like, even within just that small logic puzzle there, why we just keep coming back to this. Because solving that midway through the game, it's a puzzle that just as you figure it out and solve it, you know that there's, you know, a seemingly infinite number of other small logic puzzles that we could have had that you would also need to figure out. And every seed is different, so this is why we come back. It's a head scratcher, but it's a fun head scratcher.
Uh-oh. That's why I got the fairy. So fun fact, iron knuckles aren't that hard if you just go up to their left knee and just spam crouch stab. They can't get you. Just like that. So after we clear the rest of the Spirit Temple checks here, there's really only one major place we haven't gone yet, and that is Gerudo Training Grounds, where I was originally going to go a long time ago, but we just got more items, so we didn't need to. Other checks we have left after Gerudo Training Grounds area are really the target in the woods, because we just got the slingshot, and there's also the treasure chest game. So if for some reason, if we don't have an item from Gerudo's Training Grounds, the Mirror Shield, then we know there's only 2 places left where it can be. So we are almost done. We just gotta clear the rest of the seed out here to find the Mirror Shield.
And were you going to reverse Wasteland to get there?
Yes, and that's actually a very good trick to show off on stream.
Yes, excellent. So as we mentioned earlier, Lensless Wasteland exists as a way to get through Haunted Wasteland without needing the Lens of Truth. And as it turns out, you can just kind of go the back way too. Once again, as long as you know where the loading zones are, you can actually go back the same way that you come through. Sorry, Tudos, didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, and the loading zones, it's the same every time, right? So you can just memorize where the loading zones are and just kind of follow the path through the desert like so here, and like just using the landmarks. Definitely, I did like, there was a day where I took like the entire afternoon and practiced this going forwards and backwards, so I didn't need the lens. I will say though, logically, it will always require the lens if you have to go this way using it, so you're never out of the loop there.
Very, very useful trick, but never required, so. And one of the reasons why it's such a useful trick is because if you have Requiem of Spirit, running backwards to Gerudo Training Grounds from here tends to be one of the quickest ways to actually get to Gerudo Training Grounds. The other way would typically involve maybe warping to Lake Hylia and then riding Epona over. But one, we don't have a warp to Lake Hylia. We know that that is on Ocarina of Time, and we're probably not grabbing that anytime soon. But this is just a very, very consistent way to get through here. The entire place opens up to you once you get through it. So you'll see that Tudos is going to walk up here, the guard on the inside of the gate, Gonna go ahead and catch him. Toss in here, we hookshot our way out. So even though we came from the back side, still totally fine. Take a peek at that, and now we are just going to do what we need to do here in the Gerudo Fortress area. And this fight has a nifty little trick here as well that Tudos will be able to kind of show off to you. Pop over here in the corner, turn around, fire the hook shot, stab the wall, and down the guard goes. The guards are programmed to jump at a certain angle when you fire your hook shot at them. So if you're in the corner, they jump right there, and the hitbox that comes off of Link's sword extends far enough out that you can get the hits there with the crouch stabs. All it takes is 5, and they don't really move at that point. And I get stuck there, so very nice way. That fight can be pesky. If they hit you with their jump slash, they do send you right back into the little imprisonment that they've built over on that side. So it's always nice to learn that little trick, save yourself the time, and more than anything, just be a little more consistent with it.
And this 1500 points check is definitely one of the harder checks in the game, which a lot of beginners just turn off because it's pretty difficult.
I was gonna say, this was definitely one that I took a whole day to learn at one point when I started off ZOOTR, so definitely don't shy away from turning this one off when you're starting off. But just like the Dompe race earlier, and I did mention this earlier, since Tudos was able to get more than 1,500 points right away, he'll get both of the checks. He doesn't have to do this twice, which is a nice quality of life change in Randomizer.
All right, so just from the process of elimination with how many checks are left in the game, there's a very good chance that the mirror shield's going to be in here. It's not a guarantee. What we don't want to see is the hammer, because all of a sudden Fire Temple becomes an option, and that sounds annoying. Hopefully that's not the case, but...
Oh?
Come on.
Come on.
Give it to us right away. I mean, I'm not gonna die now, so there's that.
And also, Tudos did mention this earlier, but you can see the nice thing here is he's able to peek and see those sizes of the chest, so he knows if there's any important checks locked behind these keys. So we do see a couple of big chests there.
Yeah, we're definitely going to hit up that room as soon as possible. We're going to need to get 2 keys, though. Hopefully we can get that quick here. All right, there's one. And there's 9 total keys in here, so I'm keeping track of how many keys we find. So we have 5 keys seen. And this is because there is the wonderful check in this Gerudo's Training Grounds area called the toilets. Because it's a bunch of water that spins around and you have to collect the silver rupees in there. And it's the longest one in the Gerudo Training Grounds, so ideally we do not want to have to check that. Oh no! Well, it's not over yet. We still have a lot of GTG to go.
Boy.
Oh no! So
Definitely was not what we wanted to see, though.
no, and our pained reaction there, just to kind of mention that, is one area that hasn't really been in the discussion whatsoever this entire seed is the Fire Temple, and One of the big reasons for that is if you do not have the hammer, there's a lot of scenarios where you really can't go high in Fire Temple at all. There's really only one check that you have access to. That is the chest right next to the boss door. And if, as you're going through and you check that check, it is not a small key, that's it. You're key locked, and you can't get any higher in the dungeon. Which means that you don't have to think about it until you find the hammer. And we just found the hammer. So, cross your fingers, everybody. We want this next big chest on the screen to be our mirror shield.
Oh, and there's another one back there.
Place is loaded.
GDG is a lot of items, so the chance of it being loaded is pretty high per seed. Oh, well, now we gotta go back to that other big chest. It's the seed that keeps on giving. I like to call this casino mode because now we are basically casinoing where the mirror shield is.
Nifty maneuvering here to grab some of these silver rupees in a more optimal order.
There's actually a really cool trick to doing this room without the hook shot, but it requires being grabbed by the wall master to get to the rupee that you don't have the hook shot for. That does waste a lot of time because it does transport you back to the beginning of the dungeon, so we're not going to do that strat.
We talked about it a little bit during Engel's run, but for those of you who are, again, maybe a little bit newer to Ocarina of Time Rando as a whole, one of the reasons why Gerudo Training Grounds is such an intriguing area as a whole is simply because it requires so many items to full clear, but that also means that you could reasonably need to go there with only a couple items. So you saw right as Tudos came in, he was able to shoot a target with just a bow, and that was enough to get 2 checks. And there are plenty of seeds where that might be the item that you need.
Uh-oh.
And speaking of the item that you need, I hope I've spoken into
Please?
existence.
Yay!
It is! And we are in go mode, everybody. Back to the Spirit Temple we go.
All right. Kind of mean to put it in GTG, but we got it, and that's all that matters.
So if you are just joining us and have not heard the term go mode, we call it go mode whenever we have everything, and I do mean everything needed to beat all the dungeons remaining as well as Ganondorf. So we are in go mode right now. We have another term, glow mode, that is we can beat all of the dungeons, but we don't yet have light arrows, and we're going to need to talk to Ganon. And there's many other fun puns that people will put in. No mode, I think, is one where we know we're what we need is. We just don't have it yet. And all sorts of fun pieces on top of that build.
Thankfully, Tudos has already gone through this dungeon and can just kind of zip, zap, zoop up to the top here and head straight to the boss.
I don't think it would have mattered that much because we got magical late, but this would have been where Farrah's Wind would have been nice to have, just so I could place it up top here so I just could warp back from GTG.
Bomb dropping here is a nice little trick to save yourself a little bit of time. Once Link starts the pushing animation, even if he gets knocked out of it by an enemy hitting him or a bomb, doesn't matter. It still just decides to move as if something was pushing it the rest of the way. So it's a good way to save yourself a little bit of time. You'll see runners ask to be hit by that Lizalfos sometimes, or you can just drop a bomb and take matters into your own hands. Throw mode, that's really good.
You find yourself in that situation, honestly, too often in ZOOTR, where you're just looking for the boomerang or Rudo's letter.
All right, Nine, why don't you explain the intricacies of the Twin Rova fight?
Oof, I was about to throw that hot potato to you, so good on you for dodging that one. So, Twin Rova is one of the still somewhat RNG-dependent bosses here that you'll fight. So you're going to see that Tudos is going to try to get into an area where he can see both of them. And what he's going to try to end up doing is using his hook shot to stall one of the sisters as they are flying about. So right here, we've got both of them in an area that we like. Continually firing the hook shot to keep it there means that we have a nice guaranteed lined up shot, and we kind of take the RNG aspect of it out. If they spawn next to each other, you can pretty much ensure that they're going to be in an area where you can hit them with the mirror shield. Now, sometimes you just don't have that option. When they're this wide, you do need a little bit of luck, and it looks like we got it going the right way this time. Out comes the fire, and there it goes. But if she had gone to the left there, of course, you would really kind of just have to hope, but we're actually going to get two really quick shots, which is always nice. So, just need one
triple.
More. That's
I've
unbelievable.
never seen the triple in a seed.
And now we're going to stall them here. There are scenarios where they'll immediately start another cast, and you'll have to do it 5 times. But if you get them both spinning there, you can kind of bypass that portion of it. This phase of the fights, if you know how to get the quick one cycle, this can go by very quickly. The first 3 shots will always be of the same element, so we can expect it to go pretty quickly and pretty smoothly. Now, Tudos is going to immediately jump over here, crouch down, fire it from there, and now is able to catch Twin Rova on the way down. And that's one of the important parts here, because if you don't catch Twin Rova on the way down there with the Master Sword, it is very easy to miss the one cycle. So that's why Tudos jumps over there. It just puts him in the right position early on, and is able to get a very comfortable one cycle. But if you do not get that one cycle, you're once again sort of at the mercy of RNG. There's not really a rhyme or reason to how Twin Rova will throw out the next few fireballs at that point. You could get 3 consecutive, you could have to wait 5 or 6 to get the 3 that you need. And just something we don't want to have to deal with, but all in all, a pretty smooth Twin Rova fight. We just have 1 fight left.
Now here's the big question I have right now for Tudos. What's your plans for taking out Ganon here at the end? How are you going to approach him? Because the second phase of the Dwarf Ganon fight is can take damage to anything, including the Deku Nuts.
Well, for the first phase here, let's just say we're going to use some glass. You can actually beat Ganondorf with glass, and we're going to show that off here pretty shortly. Our bridge is spawned. And now, for those familiar with the game, there are also checks in Ganon's castle. You just can't get here without the 6 medallions. So the chance of anything that you need actually being in here is very low, but you can still have things like magic, the light arrows be in here, or another item to get you into another dungeon to get you the light arrows. So basically any logic involved with the light arrows, that's usually when checks in this final area come into play.
And I just gotta say, as Tudos is making the climb here with the fights, the puns that you all have come up with for some of these, like, I think Dope Mode is probably my favorite so far. You have everything you need, but you forgot to open one of the chests for an item that you needed. These are so good. Oh, man.
The double defense troll us in GTG, but I'm actually kind of glad I have it now, because now if one of those Stalfos hit me, I would have only taken 1 heart instead of 2. And these Iron Knuckles will only do 2 hearts of damage instead of 4. And remember, those Iron Knuckles hate it when you hit their left knee.
Salt and pepper, as we affectionately call them. And the final climb begins.
The final climb, 2 nice, lovely Zelda's Lullaby music playing in the background.
Isn't it great?
I love Randomizer. Let's see what kind of music we get against Ganon. Light arrows from the Shadow Temple.
I think coming up here, I don't think Engel did this strat our last show, but bottle strats for this fight. If you're ever, maybe struggling with this one or just want a more consistent way to hit back those the light balls back to Ganon, the bottle can actually be used instead of the sword, and it just gives you more frames to hit the ball back.
And a wonderful 1 cycle there from Tudos. It's only fitting that a game full of bosses that can be 1 cycled with proper timing has a final boss that is able to do the same. So I don't believe that Engel got the 1 cycle in his fight there. So thank you to Tudos for putting that on. But that's how quickly that fight can go if everything goes right. And we all played tennis for 5 minutes as kids.
And right there you saw Tudos do a jump slash coming into this cutscene. Although Ganon's gonna hit away our Master Sword, Tudos already has that damage stored. So he'll be able to use crouch stabs here with the Megaton Hammer. Still do that higher damage value.
Yep, crouch stabs carry over to the Megaton Hammer, and I hope everyone enjoys the nice mini-game music for the final boss. This is honestly one of the best music tracks you can get in Randomizer for this boss.
I mean, given how relatively easy Ganon is, like, he almost is a mini-game. He's the timing your rolls tutorial. Unfortunately, he's also the final boss, so you don't really get to put the tutorial to use. Almost there. Get your GGs ready in chat, everybody.
Time is our last slash coming up here on Ganon.
End time.
GG. All right, again, chat, gonna put those links in chat. If you are interested in trying this out for yourself, we have a great link there to give you all the information you'll need to get started. I'll post it again after all the GGs go through in chat one more time. Also have links to all three of our Twitch channels if you want to check those out. All three of us do Ocarina of Time Randomizer on our streams, some more than others, but we're also always happy to answer your questions if you're looking to get started as well. Nine and Tudos, thank you again for being on here and helping explain Ocarina of Time Randomizer. You both did a fantastic job, and I want to give you both a chance to maybe just shout out anything that you're doing on your streams and where everyone can find you.
Yeah, so normally this is the point where I falsely give my Twitch stream as Tudos' Twitch stream. So you can follow me at twitch.tv/Tudos. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, I do stream Ocarina of Time Randomizers, as Nukes mentioned here. I typically enter a lot of the weekly races, and when there are bigger races and co-op races going, you can typically find me there. I also commentate for the Silver Gauntlets Twitch channel for a lot of events that they do as well.
And then,
what about you, Tudos?
And then you can find my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/9wholegrains. I am currently participating in a ZOOTR tournament right now, and usually I've been streaming a lot of these lately to practice. But other than that, I am actually working on DK64 Randomizer, so you'll probably be seeing that hit at some point soon. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but
I knew we'd do it.
The point is, they're randomizers for mini games, and I want to make DK64 one of them, so.
Yeah, and we will be back again with more Ocarina Improv in a couple weeks at the same time. I believe next show we should be having on 2 racers so that we can actually see a race and how that goes and kind of explain the intricacies of that on stream. But for now, this is the end of Hotfix shows for the night, but make sure you stick around, chat. We will be actually rating some more speedrunning content here. We're going to be heading over to the only marathon that's going on this weekend, raising money for the Trevor Project in honor of the only kid who unfortunately passed away recently. So please stick around for that. It's a great marathon for a great cause, and definitely could use your support, whether if it's just as a viewer or as maybe you feel inspired to donate. definitely stick around and check that out.